Okay. Good evening, everyone. Today is November 18th. It is now 5:30. I am calling our the San Mateo Foster City School District School Board meeting to order. And we are immediately going to recess to closed session. And in closed session, we have three items. Item 2.1, Government Code Section 54957, Public Employee Discipline Dismiss Release. Item 2.2, Government Code Section 54956.9, Conference with Legal Counsel, Existing Litigation. And item 2.3, Conference with Legal Counsel, Anticipated Litigation, Initiation of Litigation pursuant to Section 54956.9, Subsection D, Subsection 4, one potential case. And so with that, I will recess this to closed session, and we will see you guys at 6:30. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We are returning to our publicly scheduled meeting of the San Mateo Foster City School Board at 6:36 p.m. We are reconvening out of closed session. I want to thank everybody for your patience. We had just some technical issues here at the beginning of the meeting. So reporting out of closed session by a vote of 4-1, or one abstention, that is, one certificate employee was released from an administrator position and reassigned to a certificated position within the scope of the administrator's credential, effective the close of the 21-22 school year. So that is our report out of closed session. And we are immediately going to item 3.2, which is our flag salute. So if everyone would please unmic or unmute and join me in the flag salute, that'd be great. Ready? Begin. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 3.3, which is roll call. Trustee Proctor.
Here.
Trustee Watkins.
Here.
Trustee Warren.
Here.
And Trustee Corzo.
Here.
And I'm here as well. All right. Approval of tonight's agenda, item 3.4. We are up for vote for this, but I do have some changes that we'd like to make. First off, item number 8.1, I'm recommending to the board that we pull this item to a date uncertain. And then item 9.1, we are going to move up to the beginning of the meeting after the consent agenda. So they will go before item 7.1. And we do have speakers that are being here, and historically we bring the speakers up to the beginning of the meeting. So those are the two changes that I am recommending for approval based on trustee and public requests. Anybody have any questions about that or would like to make a motion?
Motion to approve tonight's agenda with the removal of 8.1 and moving 9.1 after the consent agenda.
A second.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Watkins for the motion and Trustee Corzo for the second. Roll call vote, Trustee Proctor.
Yes.
Trustee Watkins.
Yes.
Trustee Warren.
Yes.
And Trustee Corzo.
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. Okay, so the agenda has been changed and modified. We are now moving on to the approval of the minutes from November 4th. Does anybody have any changes, corrections, or would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
A second.
Thank you, Trustee Proctor for the motion and Trustee Watkins for the second. Roll call vote. Trustee Proctor.
Yes.
Trustee Watkins.
Yes.
Trustee Warren.
Yes.
And Trustee Corzo.
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. Okay, so we are moving on to our permanent status certificated recognition. Um, I'm not sure who's going to take the lead on that, but
It will be me. Thank you, Trustee Chen. Tonight, it's my honor to congratulate 51 teachers who have completed their probationary period and earned permanent status with the San Mateo Foster City School District. The district does not take decisions about tenure lightly and looks upon this as a long-term commitment and a partnership with each teacher. Gaining tenure recognizes the exceptional achievements of these teachers who began their service in the district in the 1920 school year when we closed schools in March due to the pandemic. We extend our gratitude to our new permanent teachers who've gone above and beyond the call of duty and showed tremendous resilience to serve the student, staff, and school committee during these difficult times. The district is very fortunate to have these incredibly talented and dedicated group working with our students. We want to thank the teachers for their ongoing commitment to the San Mateo Foster City School District. At this time, we'd like to recognize our teachers and support staff who chose to be publicly recognized in the following video. Mr. Perez, can you please play the video?
Sharing the video now.
Big congratulations go out to Jennifer Bravara, Christina Roberts, and Van Doan. Thank you for being a great part of our Audubon community.
Congratulations, Ms. Reeser. We are honored to work with you here at Baywood.
Congratulations on making permanent status. We are so proud to have you here at Bayside.
We're so happy for your permanent status and that you share your talents with us.
Tonight, we'd like to honor Ginny Desai and Dustin Bryan for becoming permanent members of Bowditch Middle School. Congratulations.
Congratulations to our staff and teachers at Brewer Island who have attained permanent status as certificated employees.
Congratulations to our two certificated school nurses, Catherine Lee and Marilyn Ponce de Leon, as they receive their permanent status.
Thank you so much for everything that you do for our students and our families. Congratulations.
We are so fortunate to have everybody on our team contributing to what makes our staff and our community so great. Thank you.
Biggest congratulations to both our amazing PE teacher, Dave Stebbins, and our devoted fourth grade teacher, Mallory Landry, for their third year of teaching service here in SMFCSD and getting granted tenure so we can keep you teachers forever.
I want to congratulate three amazing staff members, Leslie McMahon, Jessica Blundell, and Liz Green. Thank you so much for being part of our team.
I am just thrilled to be able to congratulate all the members of the San Mateo Foster City School District family for their status as permanent in our district, and a special shout out to our Parkside Tiger staff. Thank you for all of your hard work, your dedication to Montessori, to your students, your families, and for being a part of our amazing team. We are so proud of you.
Thank you for that presentation. It's fantastic to see everybody and recognize your amazing accomplishments. I wish that as we are getting back to pre-pandemic days that you guys were all still here. Again, back in the day, we'd all celebrate, and I believe there's usually a picture and cake and everything else. But as we're still dealing with the pandemic, the video is very fantastic. And so I would just like to congratulate everyone. Again, I would say that our Director of Human Resources has always said we want superstars, and we definitely have them. So thank you very much. Okay, with that, we're moving on to item 5. But before we go on to item 5, Trustee Corzo, would you mind doing the Spanish language translations announcement, please?
Sure. Gracias a todos por estar presentes esta noche con nosotros. Si ocupa traducción, por favor, levante la mano o también puede hacer clic en su pantalla en el icono del mundo que ve en su pantalla y ahí puede cambiar la idioma a español. Gracias.
Great, thank you, Trustee Corzo. And usually at this time, I also like to announce how many people are here. I'm happy to say we have the most in-person public attendance that we've had since we've returned to having live meetings. I wish there was a camera facing you guys. We have at least 10 people here in the audience. And we have online, we have 66. So I really appreciate everyone being here. It just, again, sort of think about that we're hopefully coming in then too, or the light is at the end of the tunnel. So we are moving on to item 5.1, public statements related to non-agenda topics. The San Mateo Foster City School Board cannot act upon any matter that has not been included and publicly posted on the agenda, except under limited circumstances as permitted by law. The board may refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and or action where appropriate. So because we have members in the audience, we do go ahead and alternate. So we will have members in the audience first, those who are live, speak, and I have 2 speakers on speaker cards, and then we will go on to the members online. So first to speak is Dr. Barbara Adams.
Good evening, School Board and Superintendent Ochoa. My name is Dr. Barbara Adams, and I reside at 834 Granada Lane in Foster City. I'm here to commend you on your plans to develop a new school campus with community service at the North Central neighborhood at the current site of the Mandarin Immersion Camp program. I'm a retired school administrator. I've worked as assistant superintendent in West Contra Costa and Alameda, and I was also chief of schools in Portland Public Schools in Oregon and Boston Public Schools. My most rewarding work was being principal of Audubon School and Turnbull Learning Academy in our district. 28 years ago, in 1993, Evelyn Taylor, then principal in North Shoreview and a community leader in the North Central neighborhood, and I were appointed to be co-principals of the new elementary school in North Central, Turnbull Learning Academy. We weren't designed as a school with a wraparound services, but we quickly became a community school with the help of our teacher leaders, parents, and community and students. Samaritan House was located at the end of the block next to our school. With John Kelly, who's then father of Samaritan House, we provided dental and medical clinics to our students, as well as breakfast and after-school snacks. Samaritan House also provided assistance to parents needing food and employment. San Mateo Public Library provided evening literacy classes in English for parents and family members. And the Audubon PTA provided us with educational experiences for students on minimum Wednesdays. Parent participation was required, and we learned to customize the participation for families who sometimes work 2 to 3 jobs. And we strive to help parents to be effective advocates for their children. Partners in School Innovation, a foundation in San Francisco, provided assistance to schools across the country to improve student achievement, started their work with us, and we became the first school they built a partnership. These are some of the things we did. We never claimed to be a stellar example of a community school, but we strive to be. More importantly, we're part of the history of this district. We became a California Distinguished School facing insurmountable hurdles. I recommend that that you learn from our successes and failures, because what you are about to do in the quest of equity will tax your resources and your human capital, time and energy. You will face criticism because you might give a school more than you do other schools. The key question is, do you have the will? And finally, I recommend you define equity in understandable language without the jargon, so people can be inspired to be part of the vision and part of something greater than them. Equity is not the equal treatment of unequals. I am excited about your vision and commend you. If I can be of any service, I'll be happy to be part of your work if you want. But thank you very much for allowing me to speak tonight. And I will leave with you a copy of the Turnbull story, which was our attempt to address the needs of the community and teach students to be stellar learners and contributing members in their community. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments. Next speaker is Andrew Prock.
I think we're ready. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Ochoa, district members, and fellow parents. My name is Andrew Prock, and I'm a resident of San Mateo. I'd like to open tonight's discussion by raising the issue of communication. In all of my endeavors, communication is an always present challenge, and by far the most difficult challenge to master. I raise the issue of communication because I see an opportunity for the district and the community to strengthen collaboration and trust by doing this hard thing, communication. Recently, input was solicited from parents and students by the district. Unfortunately, only a small portion of the community was surveyed. While with most stakeholders excluded from participation, we will see the survey results tonight. We'll also see results from an in-class survey of students. This survey similarly represents a very narrow slice of our community. Community input is important. Community engagement is important. Communication is important, but it's also hard. As we consider the survey results presented tonight, let us all reflect on how much more valuable, insightful, and meaningful the survey would have been if it had represented an inclusive survey of our entire community. As we move forward, I ask the district to be more inclusive in gathering input. There's a deep-seated desire in the community to build up the trust needed to make many of these difficult decisions together. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Diego P, sorry. We'd like to go ahead and open up public comment online. Again, this is for non-agenda topics.
Sure. If anyone would like to speak on non-agenda items, click the raise hand functionality on the bottom part of your screen, and we will call you shortly. In this order, we have 3 hands raised. We'll start with Fernando. Fernando, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Hello, can everyone hear me okay? Perfect. So, hi everyone. I wanted to ask questions around teacher pay and COVID requirements. Firstly, about pay. Why are teachers making so little? As a substitute teacher, if I work every single school hour available in the year, I think the maximum I can make is around $40,000 a year. Given this has no benefits, there isn't work throughout the whole year, this is way below the living wage for this county. Why are we investing so little in education, whereas policemen and firemen get paid so much more? Even if the work was year-round, the total pay would only be the minimum living wage, according to MIT calculator, for one of the richest counties in the country. Is this how this county values education? Secondly, about COVID requirements. Are we going above and beyond federal and state requirements for vaccination and testing? I am a fully vaccinated individual. The recent email sent to teachers said that substitute teachers will be required to be tested weekly regardless of vaccination status? Will these tests be free? And will we get compensated for the time it takes to get tested? Thank you for your time, and I hope you can address both of these points.
Thank you so much. Okay. Next, we have Randy. Randy, go ahead.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Adams for her comments. I appreciate the general effort of this board to bring awareness to topics like equity and inclusion, and I applaud some of your major accomplishments, including prioritizing a neighborhood school for North Central neighborhood, taking a hard look at the impact of busing on North Central students and families, and finally being willing to admit some of the district's shortcomings and adequately serving its students with disabilities. However, there have been and continue to be some missteps, in my opinion, in actively ignoring the needs and contributions of our higher performing students and their families. This failure to nourish the entire ecosystem of our district students is an ongoing missed opportunity that so far has resulted in a drop in the district's enrollment of more than 1,500 students. The more participation that we get in public education from across the entire spectrum of ability and background, the better education can be for each individual student. We should be striving to meet the needs of all students in our public schools. At least that's why I stay committed at a deep level to public education. I worry about this board's true commitment to meeting the needs of all students in our public schools. I've heard members of the board say publicly that they don't care that higher SES folks are choosing private options. I think that this is an irresponsible view, and it's not being a good steward of the public interest. I don't get the sense that there's a lot of respect for the parents in our community based on ways that I've observed board members communicate verbally and non-verbally throughout the past few years. I understand that the pandemic has been rough for school board members across the country. However, you have all chosen to be leaders, and you are responsible to lead in word and action. I'd like to offer up a simple suggestion for how you, the board, can be more mindful about how you speak to each other, how you speak to district staff, to community members, and to students. I've listened to every meeting all year, and I've heard board members refer to the aforementioned folks as you guys. This may seem to be an easygoing way to address a group of people, but to quote Joe Pinsker in The Atlantic from a couple of years ago, to many, it's a symbol of exclusion, a word with an originally male meaning that is frequently used to refer to people who don't consider themselves guys. This insidious phrase is particularly troubling to see used by a male leader addressing a group of female peers. It reinforces a power structure that only recently has been disrupted. When that same phrase is applied to trans or gender nonconforming folks, how might that feel for them or for us? I'd like to suggest that not only is it important to fully walk the walk, you might consider what it might mean to talk the talk. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Randy. And next we have Marianne. Marianne, go ahead.
Hi there. First and foremost, thank you for all the work you all are doing for our school district. It does not go unnoticed, and our family is incredibly grateful for everything that you're doing. A month or two ago, our principal at Audubon shared about our then upcoming annual giving drive, which had a tagline of Stronger Together. We had a wonderful week of giving, community interaction, and school spirit. We have such an amazing community at Audubon, and we've rallied this year and surpassed our giving goals. We are really, really proud. The excitement of that week quickly came undone with the news that our assistant principal, Nelson Hunter, would be leaving Audubon to fill a position at another school. I know everyone says this, but it's most certainly true that Audubon is stronger together. We are a team, but that team sentiment flows beyond our school walls. We still need your help, district help. Losing our AP in and of itself is not a huge cause for alarm. However, Losing our AP combined with the recent loss of a TOSA, actually 2 TOSAs as of right now, EL teacher, RSP teacher, and now an AP is concerning. We are also lacking one-on-one aids, as many schools are, for some students that really need and require extra help. From a parent perspective, it feels like Audubon is last in line for services, and that's a really tough pill to swallow. Our staff is absolutely amazing, and I know our staff is up for the challenge in front of them. That is not my concern. They can do this. However, just because they can wear many hats does not mean that they should. Our PTA is also incredible and strong and doing a wonderful job building our community back up post-COVID. But our PTA cannot foot the bill for additional staff members, nor do I think PTAs in general should be funding any staff. I know I am all over the place with this and I apologize. I'm very nervous. This is my first time speaking. But where does this leave us? While I realize our school sits under 600 students as of today, we are by no means a small school. In the past, when we were in the 500 plus student range, we shared an assistant principal with another school in the district. So I am wondering if this idea has been taken into consideration for the remainder of this school year, or if we go from having a full-time AP to none in a matter of days. Additionally, I'd like to ask if we would get an AP back if and when we hit the 600 student threshold, as I imagine that will happen within the next year. Any feedback is appreciated, and a big shout out to our amazing staff and community at Audubon. Our family feels very, very lucky to be a part of such an amazing community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marianne. We have no further hands. President Chen.
Great. Thank you to everyone who provided your comments in person and online. We do appreciate everyone's comments and do take them at heart. We are moving on. So item 5.2, public statements related to agenda items. Persons will be called on at the appropriate times. Item 5.3, the foundation and committee reports. Does anyone have any foundation or committee reports they would like to report out to the board?
I have one. I attended the Ed Foundation meeting this week, and there were several topics discussed, including the gala that we recently had. They're still reconciling numbers, but it was very successful. Coming up on November 30th is Giving Tuesday, so look for more information. If you have some extra money, please consider supporting the Ed Foundation. And there was a couple other things that was discussed, but I just wanted to give some recognition to the Ed Foundation. I think, first of all, it's one of my favorite committees to be on, but really these group of people that are on the board, they are really focused on and aligned with the district goals, and they really put some very thoughtful ideas and decision-making when they're talking about where funds can be used and different grants that they're going for, and really aligned with the idea of equity and everything that we're working for here at the school district. So I just want to thank them, and I hope that everybody can dig deep and contribute some money on Giving Tuesday.
We had an equity task force meeting this week. Noelia, feel free to jump in with anything that I missed. I know I missed the first little bit, but had an opportunity. The bulk of the time was spent considering the board's desire for the equity task force to be involved in looking at board policies related to discipline, and individuals of the task force sharing their own experiences as students, educators, administrators with discipline in our district. And so that will be something that they will be taking up and looking more at kind of other examples that are out there for school discipline policies. And again, and kind of as we revisit our school to prison pipeline resolution and next steps there, the equity task force will be involved in that. And so they kind of made the decision that that would be an area of focus. So that was where the bulk of time was spent.
That was a great summary, so I won't add anything. Thank you.
I attended the CDAC Committee meeting. And we had a presentation from our SELPA president, Karen Breslov, who talked about the IEP process and went through how parents can request an IEP, how the meeting goes, and just basically walk parents and family members through the process from child find to the various meetings that end up being held through the process.
Great, thank you, everybody. I do not have anything to report. So we are moving on to item 5.4, SMETA, CSEA, and SMEA updates. Diego P., would you mind bringing everybody in, please? Thank you.
Good evening. I know Alicia's not feeling well, so I'll go first. I don't have a lot to report. I do want to send out a sincere congratulations to all the members who received permanent status in the district, and express my gratitude for the contributions that they've made to our students over the last 3 years. And beyond that, I just want to wish everyone a happy and healthy Thanksgiving and express my gratitude to everyone here for everything that you guys do in service of our students. So thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, board members, Superintendent Ochoa, and community members. Oops, Daisy, you can't see me. For those of you who may not know me, I am Amanda Driscoll. I'm the principal at Baywood Elementary in San Mateo. On behalf of SMEA, I want to share a similar message of congratulations to all of our certificated staff members this evening who are celebrating tenure. Your contributions are tremendous, and we are so grateful for the way you have supported students and staff and families throughout these first couple of years in San Mateo Foster City. Additionally, want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. This Thanksgiving, I'm thankful for many, many, many things, but I'm especially grateful for community we build each day. Last week at Baywood, at additional schools in our district, in our community, and across our nation, we celebrated World Kindness Day. At Baywood, we created collages of kindness in our classrooms, just to celebrate the power of kindness in our relationships, in our classrooms, in our schools, in our families, and in our community. This was one really pretty simple way to come together as a community and celebrate kindness. And I'm grateful we can continue celebrating kindness this week as we head into Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share this evening, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving break.
Fantastic. Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Amanda, for your comments. And we do hope Alicia is feeling better and on her way to getting healthy. So we are now moving on to item 5.5, board announcements. Does anyone have any announcements they would like to make? One shaking head. And you. Go ahead, Noelle.
I just wanted to announce that yesterday was Ruby Bridges Day, and many of our schools participated, but a big shout out goes to Lead Elementary School, who had a really great showing at the Shoreview Shopping Center. I believe over 100 different families showed up, or 100 people showed up and then walked to school all together, and our superintendent was able to be there. I was planning on being there, but as you can all see, I'm home. I have a little bit of a cold I'm still recovering from, so have not been going out for that reason. So big shout out to all of our schools that participated, all of our kiddos that walked to school and really celebrated the history of Ruby Bridges. Thanks.
Any other announcements? One, two shaking heads. No,
I,
no?
I have one more, sorry. I forgot.
Okay, go, Trustee Corso.
For folks that don't know, we have an amazing representative, amazing Congresswoman Jackie Spear, who just a couple of days ago announced that she will not be running for re-election. And I don't know if folks have really know her history, but she has a really compelling life story in terms of all of the obstacles that she's overcome and her dedication to public service. She started as a supervisor in San Mateo County and has been an amazing congresswoman for many years and really championed really, really important issues in our community and at a national level. So I just want to create some space to thank Congresswoman Jackie Spear for her service and wish her like a happy retirement.
Great, thank you, Trustee Corzo. Any other trustees? No? I'll make 2 announcements, and some of them are really more board comments, but I just want everyone to hear. We, as a board, if you don't know, we visit schools at least every month, sometimes 2 or 3 schools. And last week we were able to visit Brewer Island, Audubon, and our new school, Beach Park Elementary. And so I just want to thank everybody for those site visits. They were amazing. And I did just want to highlight Beach Park Elementary. It is something really rewarding to actually go there and actually see students in our new school learning. And after everything that we've been through in terms of the design and how everything was laid out and the actual construction, and even the little bit of delay while they were at Bowditch for a little bit, it's absolutely amazing. And so for anyone who didn't get to go on that site visit, I would highly encourage it. Also, the new turf was in, and so that was pretty amazing because it had just rained the night before and that turf was dry. So the other announcement, which leads into the superintendent report, is I just want to thank everybody. So it's a little before your report, but I will mention it anyways. On Monday, for those who don't know, we did have our big vaccination day. And originally we had only 500 vaccinations, but we were able to do 731. It was an amazing experience. And I wanted to, and I know Superintendent Ochoa, you're going to talk about this, but I just want to thank you ahead of time. Thank you and all of the staff who helped out on that day. It was absolutely amazing. I walked the lines a couple of times and saw some families coming. And even though at the last minute, we had an additional 300 doses given to us, so it kind of made the wait a little bit longer. People were happy. They were finally getting their shots. And, like Governor Newsom had mentioned before about the light at the end of the tunnel, this was just a huge step. And knowing that at 731 shots, that's roughly 10% of our student population from ages 5 to 11. So I just want to give everyone kudos on that. It was very amazing, and I'm super happy that we were able to do this for our school community. So with that, I will turn it over to Superintendent Ochoa, which I believe you are going to talk about it. So
definitely have. I want to with a big thank you to San Mateo County, to public health officials, a big thank you to the County Office of Education and the work that they did to coordinate this with us. The team at the district level, it was really a labor of just a lot of effort and caring and engagement from secretarial support staff here that works at the district office, as well as at school sites, from our district administration, every department being represented, multiple school sites, some of my principal heroes out there working the lines and working the event. Our maintenance department and our facilities department was really incredible in setting up the design of the event, getting everything in place before the event started. Our student services department and our assistant superintendent of student services, Dennis Hills, and his team, Susie Riley, everybody on the district nursing team, all of the staff members in that department who really just rose up to make sure that the event was a big success. For those that didn't attend, we were able to coordinate with Burrell Middle School to Mrs. Grotans, the teacher, and her students who came out and played music for us to just create an environment of joy and a relaxed environment. Mr. Hills was able to coordinate having a Mr. Softy truck on site, with which I think a fair number of parents, use that to their advantage in terms of getting their kids, calmly to sit down for the vaccination. In addition to that, a huge thank you to Principal Maria Di Mattei and her assistant principals and their entire school for hosting us and welcoming us. For those that don't know, the school was doing parent-teacher conferences right up until the start of the event, so there was just a lot of coordination happening. And I do want to let the community know that we have been contacted about hosting additional events. There is going to be a focus on putting them in parts of it where there's maybe a concern that local residents don't have as much access. So we'll host events, as many as they'll allow us to, in those neighborhoods. So if they were to say, okay, we want to have an event in North Central and also one in North Shoreview and also one, in the George Hall neighborhood or in the Sunny Brae neighborhood, then we would basically opt in to host those events. I think those are several weeks out, so it wouldn't be anything immediate or anything, prior to December. But when they get a little bit closer to the final decision, we'll step in again. So Dennis, this is your notice that we're gonna have 4 parties to put together in the weeks ahead, as many as they'll let us, because for us, it's just another layer of mitigation. It's another layer of safety. I do want to let board and the community know we are very carefully monitoring our data this school year. I can tell the community and the board that our attendance rates throughout the district are really something to be proud of. We'll prepare a report for the board at a future meeting to really give an idea of the kind of successes that we've had. That, to me, it's all part of this story of multiple layers of mitigation, a real community willingness to work together, and of course, all of it resulting in these children being healthy and in our schools being open. I do want to also call out my experience walking with the parents at LEAD. From the shopping center in the morning. I think the motorists were sort of shocked to see so many people walking at the same time. It definitely got the message across that they should drive a little bit more slowly around schools, because we were really all over the place. I could not see the front of the line because I walked in the very back, with the PTA president's spouse, and we said, oh, they're up there somewhere, but we can't see them because we were such a big group. And those streets in that part of town are really narrow. I mean, only 2 people, um, especially me, only 2 people can really walk next to each other on those sidewalks. But it was just a great turnout. The PTA president did a great job that morning of talking to the kids about Ruby Bridges and engaging them and thinking about what we were walking for and why we were doing it. And then when we arrived at LEAD, the PTA at LEAD had set up donuts and coffee and fruit for the parents and kids who had walked. And, as soon as the kids got on campus, they were excited. So it was just all in all a great event. I do want to call out Susie Riley, our coordinator for student services. She went to the Laurel event that morning and then swung over and made it to the LEAD event afterwards. So many, many thanks to those folks. And a final thank you and congratulations to all of our recently tenured teachers. It's a huge achievement in your career. We are so grateful to have you in the district, and we're looking forward to the next 28 years at least with each of you.
Great. Thank you so much, Superintendent Ochoa, for that update. We are now moving on to the proposed consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered by the board to be routine and will be enacted by the board in one motion in the form listed below. There will be no discussion on these items prior to the time the board votes on the motion unless members of the board, staff, or public request specific items be removed and discussed from the consent agenda. The superintendent and staff recommend approval of all consent items. Movement of any recommended consent item is appropriate at this time. Does any board member have any item they would like to pull for discussion or comment?
Just more of just a highlight, once again, of NPA summary, non-public agency summary for OT and behavioral support totals 633,573. And then there's 2 special education settlements within the consent agenda totaling $84,000.
Thank you, Trustee Warren. Diego P, or actually, does any member of the public in person here would like to request to pull an item on the consent agenda? No, thank you. Diego P, would you mind asking that the same question for those online, please?
Sure thing. If any members in the online Zoom audience would like to propose or mention a comment on any proposed consent agenda items, please press the raise your hand functionality on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Okay, we have 1 hand raised. And we'll start off with Randy. Randy, go ahead.
Thank you. Item 6.2.8, please.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. We will, sorry, it's a little loud. We're going to officially pull item 6.2.8 for comments. Other than that, the rest of the consent agenda is recommended for approval. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve tonight's consent agenda with the removal of 6.2.8.
I'll second.
Thank you, Trustee Watkins for the motion, Trustee Proctor for the second. Roll call vote, Trustee Proctor.
Yes.
Trustee Watkins.
Yes.
Trustee Warren.
Yes.
Trustee Corzo.
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. Okay, the consent agenda has been approved 5-0. We are now going to pull item 6.2.8. Superintendent Ochoa, did you want to talk about this? And then we will call for clarifying questions, public comment, and board direction.
Thank you, President Chin. As you know, this is an item that is presented to us by our business department. We do have our assistant superintendent, our chief business official, Patrick Gaffney, with us tonight. Patrick, I'm going to kick it over to you, let you speak to this item if you want to go ahead and unmute and address the board.
Yes, can you hear me okay? Thank you. Yes, we're bringing forward to you tonight for your approval for the installation of CO2 sensors at 6 sites that are referenced in your cover sheet: Audubon, Beresford, Fiesta Gardens, Highlands, Parkside, and Sunray, that have existing heating, air conditioning, ventilation systems that have the capacity to receive CO2 sensors that can adjust fresh air intake. The district has decided it's trying to add new controls to be able to monitor the CO2 levels in each of these classrooms. So it's a recommendation to the board that you approve of the contract with Mesa Energy due to the installation of these CO2 sensors at these sites at this time.
Great, thank you, Superintendent Ochoa and Patrick. Any clarifying questions from the board? No? Trustee Corzo, no? Okay. Any members of the in-person audience have any questions? I'm opening up public comment on this item. No? Okay. Diego P, would you mind opening public comment on the online audience, please?
Sure thing. If any member of the audience would like to make a public comment on the proposed agenda items, please raise the hand functionality. Okay, we have 1 hand raised. Randy, go ahead.
Thank you. So first of all, I'm happy to see that there it actually is possible to install some carbon dioxide monitors at these schools and to move that ahead of schedule, especially in light of the pandemic. What I'm curious about is if there is more to any of these proposals or to this agenda item than just a spreadsheet with 2 columns and 2 lines, because that's the only thing that was attached in the agenda. There was 2 lines, each with a vendor name and each with a dollar amount. Is there anything more to see about this? Any more information for the public? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm officially closing public comment on this item. Patrick, sorry. Would you mind answering the question, please?
Yeah, this is the format we provide to you, and this is bid. So this is the bid value. So we don't typically include in the board packet the bid documents themselves. So I think that's the technical question that's being asked. So this is the typical format we provide to the board, so you understand what the value of the bids were, so we can move forward with the recommendation of the entity who's provided the bids to you. So there's a whole bid packet that's posted, et cetera, that has all those details in it.
Thank you. Any other questions, board questions or comments, or would anyone like to make a motion on this item?
I was just thinking maybe the question was more, is there an agreement we can review or anything?
So once this is approved, we'll move forward with a contract with this entity. We'll do all the other typical things to do with the insurance and et cetera, et cetera. So so in terms of the types of CO2 sensors, I'm not sure what's being asked specifically. So I'm trying to respond to the question that was asked, but so I'm not sure what more detail. These would be CO2 sensors that can be installed with the existing systems. So whatever the particular systems are, whether they're Honeywell or whether the particular system is, those systems are designed to have CO2 sensors installed in those systems. So this is a bid to have that work performed with the current systems that have the capacity to house a CO2 sensor, which is, for lack of a better term, proprietary, right? That interface with the existing systems. So there may be more depth to it than that, but I hopefully that's it helps provide some information. So Ms. Proctor, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question sufficiently. I'm happy to share more detail, but
yeah, I guess in general, sometimes we review contracts when there's something that's coming up, like an agreement for services, and sometimes we don't. So I didn't know when we do one or the other.
You want to see out to bid? We bring to you the bid bid amounts are, and we have, so the format for those agreements are there's a standard set of those agreements that have been generated for us by council, and we use those standard agreements for these types of contracts. Again, I think that there might be, and I'm happy to entertain a conversation with Ms. Painter outside the board meeting if she has more questions inquiring about the capacity and how it functions and what the image of it is, if there's a model number, et cetera. I'm happy to provide that detail if there's an interest in that. But trying to answer your format question for tonight's meeting.
And Patrick, also item 6.2.3 on this agenda is another example of consent agenda item indicating an approval for an item that was bid. So if you review item 6.2.3, it's a different project, but the backup documentation that is, as you're saying, sort of the standard type of documentation we present is a spreadsheet that indicates the bid submissions themselves, indicating the company name and then the amount that was bid. And there is, as you know, Patrick, a great deal more back there, huge amounts of specifications and descriptions. Typically, we haven't done that. And I think perhaps our work together can talk a little bit about, what maybe in the future we would think about including in a board packet. But as of tonight, this is what's sort of standard for this type of, I guess, sort of a public showing of what the bids were for the project itself.
That's right. I'm sorry. Yes.
Does that sound
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't see from
Great.
here.
No, it's great. Thank you, guys. It sounds like we have a plan, and whether there's additional comments to be followed up, Patrick, you can talk to public, and it sounds like we will look at our consent agenda items for a little bit more consistency as well. So any other comments, or does anyone would like to make a motion?
To approve this agenda item.
Thank you, Trustee Corso, for the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Proctor. Roll call vote. Trustee Proctor.
Yes.
Trustee Watkins.
Yes.
Trustee Warren.
Yes. Trustee
Corzo.
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. So item 6.28 has been approved 5-0. And so that includes the entire consent agenda. We are now moving on to our modified agenda, and we're going to be jumping to item 9.1. Diego P., would you mind bringing in our speakers for item 9.1, please?
Yes.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me? Excellent. Good evening, President Chin, Vice President Proctor, Trustee Watkins, Corso, and Warren, as well as Superintendent Ochoa. So good to see you all again. My name is Eddie Flores, and tonight I speak to you in my non-publicly elected role as the Director of Youth Behavioral Health Programs for the Peninsula Healthcare District. As you may be aware, earlier this year, Peninsula Healthcare District, the board approved a 6-month pilot program with the San Mateo County Office of Education to roll out access to the CareSolus program to all K-8 schools within district boundaries. For those of you in the audience that are not aware what CareSolus is, it is essentially an online resource with a live 24/7 concierge meant to assist individuals in finding local mental health related programs and counseling services. CareSolus's web-based system works alongside on our multi-tiered systems of support as a tool for school staff and families to be able to connect with community-based mental health care resources and providers. This initiative directly intersects with the Peninsula Healthcare District's strategic initiative around youth and mental and behavioral health. And because of this positive results, which we will be sharing with you tonight, we definitely felt the board that along with Sequoia Healthcare District, who also sought benefits to their school program, we and the board approved a 3-year extension to bring this program to San Mateo Foster City School District at no cost at all. This means students, families, teachers, and staff, but not only them, but also staff's family and their extended learning community are able to access this very much needed service once again at no cost to them. Tonight, I am delighted to be here with my colleague, Miriam Stevenson from CareSolus, who will walk us through some of the highlights and the utilization specific to your district. And we will then wrap up and leave some time to field any questions or comments that the board may have at the end. So Miriam, take it away.
Thank you, Eddie. It's my pleasure to join your community for this important presentation. It seems like we're carrying on with a recurring theme to your other presentations in terms of the power of community and celebration of connection and equity of access. So along those lines, I'm hoping that Diego, I'm not sure if you can pull up the presentation or if I should share my screen.
If you're able to share your screen.
We will try technology and we'll go for it. So appreciate your patience. While I'm doing this, my name is Miriam Stevenson. I am actually an educator, and I'm CareSolus's now in-house educator. My official title with them is Executive Director of Community Engagement, and I basically get to work with communities and our district partners to be able to, oh, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Perez.
Sure thing.
To be able to really understand their community and how we best can support them. If we can go to the next slide, that would be perfect. Thank you. Little context for the board and the community around the initial pilot of CareSolus services across your entire San Mateo County. We started back in January with the partnership that Eddie described, really partnering with the County Office of Education as well in terms of engaging our districts that were a part of this partnership and their staff members to bring awareness to what the resource is, as well as train them on the platform so that they can access and utilize us to connect families and students in need to local community resources. We engaged in a variety of ways. All the trainings that the county office holds, we joined. They also pulled together HR directors, public information officers, anyone who basically could need awareness about the resource to be able to spread that awareness to their staffs as well as their communities. Now we're in the fall, and I'm going to switch slides again, please. Before we go too far into how CareSolus is serving your community in particular, I wanted to just give you a little context about CareSolus as an organization. I joined CareSolus after utilizing them in my community to really help bridge the gap to community-based resources and to really wrap around our school support structures as Eddie described. CareSolus is a mental health care coordination service that's on a mission, and our mission is equity of access to ensure that every person who has a mental health or substance use challenge can quickly find quality care matched to their unique needs, regardless of their circumstances, whether that's finances, whether that's insurance, whether it's identity. We really look at that custom match to really shorten the gap between someone having the courage to say they need help and connect to those services, because we really know that that results in positive outcomes for those who need it. Across the country, we're currently serving 4,000 institutions, which serves 3 million students. And as Eddie described, we also support the students' family members, as well as the staff and their family members. We're really most proud of that middle number of the amount of time that we save on behalf of your students, families, and staff members. Really all that legwork that it takes to do a research, to find what the options are available, to wait on hold, look for therapists who are accepting new clients. All of that is what we take off of the plates and off of the burden of your community. You can go to the next slide. Perfect. For those of you who may not have context, or if you've never sought help for yourself or a loved one, this is some of what exists in the system in terms of trying to navigate mental health care or substance use treatment. The courage to just say that you need help, to acknowledge that that's real, and to seek help is a huge, amazing first step, especially as we combat stigma every day. But once you do that, there's so many barriers in the way that oftentimes people give up, or once they connect with a provider that might be taking their insurance, that might be taking new clients, they may not have that fit, and they might find that therapy doesn't work for them because it wasn't a well-matched process. So CareSolus takes on all of this and navigates it for them. So all the person really needs to do is say, I need help. We present them with the options based on their criteria, whether that's identity-based, cultural-based, language-based, insurance-based. We do all of that research for them, present them with their options, and make sure that they have support and reminders to make their appointments, and follow up once they've started care to make sure that they're happy with their provider. And if not, we will resume that research for them to find another option. Next slide, please. We do that through 3 main ways. I'll start on the left. The warm handoff is our signature. It's really working with staff members who know your students and families the best to identify people who might be struggling. And instead of giving them a resource list and hoping that they make those phone calls or trying to remind them to make those phone calls, they hand them to us, and then we provide that individual custom support. So someone calls in and we take it from there. Essentially, they work with one person that from our organization that becomes their companion along that journey That's the middle section. Our care companion team is at the heart of everything we do. They provide personalized and, as Eddie described, concierge service. They're available 24/7 and can help in any language. We have a multilingual team, and if there is a language we don't speak, we have translation partnership to ensure that equity of access and to make sure that everyone receives the support that they need. This care companion is that navigator who goes through all those bubbles I just showed to really make sure that the person is getting the help that they need. Additionally, some people we find may not be ready to call or to really start the search process. They might just be putting their foot in the water to research what's out there. We have another web-based tool that people can anonymously search for resources in the area, match to their criteria, and at any point, if they want help making an appointment, they can connect with that care companion team to get assistance making those appointments. If next slide, please. So essentially, instead of chaos and bubbles, we calm that by having that support the whole way and follow up after appointment. Next slide, please. So for San Mateo Foster City School District, we wanted to present on how things are looking for your community in terms of utilization and engagement with the resource, but also connection to care. This slide has a lot of numbers, and so I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I do want to highlight that the left side is essentially your 6-month pilot in which the healthcare districts and the County Office of Education were deciding whether they were testing to see what kind of impact could happen. And then the next orange ones are about the 4.5 months that we've had for this new school year. Since that launch. So I wanted to just delineate those to you. Since we put these slides into your board packet, I'm happy to report for November, which we're about halfway through. We're exceeding, those numbers have changed tremendously. The November numbers, communications, interactions, people calling us for help is skyrocketing to 121, and we're midway through the month. If you go to communications saved right below, that's all the effort that we're putting out to save time for your students and family members. That's at 631. So we know that finding a therapist is incredibly hard right now, and it's taking additional labor to do that because there is such a shortage of resources. So that's astronomically high right now. Additionally, I'm really excited to report that the appointments into care for this month are at 16% or 16, which raises your percentile for this month to 145 with some carryover for the last. Some important things I wanted to highlight just overall is you all have a tremendously high appointment rate, which I credit your committed staff to setting expectations, identifying families, and really talking to them about the process so that they're more inclined to answer when we call and stick through the communication process and get connected to care. That is a fantastic appointment rate. Overall for 2021, you had about your overall average now for the whole year from the beginning of the pilot to now is averaging about 57%, which is fantastic. 83% of that has happened in just this part of the school year. I'm looking through and making sure there's another category here I haven't really touched on, and this is the anonymous searches through that tool that's web-based. That's custom for you all. It's kind of low considering your population. That's something that we can work on in terms of spreading the word and getting out there that this is an available anonymous pathway, and there is a full service kind of support available to your families as well. We can go to the next slide. Fantastic. So I wanted you to see the breakdown by demographics, and there has been some changes to this since we pulled this data for your board report as well. Some highlighted things around demographics. Since we've seen an increase in equity of access with the slides, about 22% accessed by white or Caucasian identifying families, 40% so far this year. I think that's up from what's listed at 38% for Hispanic and Latinos. One area that I'd like to partner and work with your community on is we're seeing about 17% for the Asian American community. And when I looked at your demographics for your district, that's one area where I feel like we're underrepresenting folks and would really like to make sure we're getting the word out there through parent organizations, communities. We have everything translated. So just wanting to promote and speak into the population. It is possible, however, because we do see a higher trend now of people who decline to answer or put other. So there is still some stigma in terms of attaching a cultural or other aspects of your identity to things when you're looking, and that might also be contributing to the discrepancy that we're seeing. A couple other things I wanted to highlight in terms of we are seeing access for students who or families who are identifying as non-binary or gender non-conforming. It's a critical access and resource support. We are additionally seeing an increase in children or people seeking help for younger children. That is something that we're seeing across the board nationwide, and to be expected, not surprising given the disruption to education and socialization that's happened with the pandemic. On the positive side, it's good that we're identifying students younger so they can get connected to help and hopefully mitigate some of the outcomes that they could see if their needs went unaddressed. The other area that we are seeing an uptick in is adult health, and that includes some staff members seeking treatment for themselves. We can go to the next slide. This has changed just a little bit since we prepared these slides. These are the types of reasons that people are identifying that they're seeking help for. Anxiety and depression, very consistent with what we're seeing nationwide, as well as trauma. Disruptive behavior, it's not a diagnosis so much as what people are seeing in their homes or in their classrooms, where students are having a hard time providing expected behaviors or responding to new constraints or routines. And since we pushed this to you, I think marital conflict, also not surprising, marital discord or help with your marriage or relationships has overtaken suicidal ideation, which continues to remain a concern in the county, but across the nation. This is representative this year. There were other searches that I wanted to highlight for you previously, including additional things related to alcohol, marijuana, stimulants, and inhalant uses. We are seeing an increase in substance use across our nation as well in terms of needs. So just important to highlight. And opioids has been a new search this year that hasn't appeared on your data yet. Next slide, please. Perfect. So this is a compilation of what people are telling us is their insurance coverage. A couple of things that's changed since we submitted this is that Medi-Cal has actually become the top at the top of the list, followed by some of your standard HMOs, Kaiser, Blue Cross. This is one thing I really like to highlight to communities because often we feel like if you have insurance, everything's easy. And what we're seeing in CareSolus is that people actually need help navigating really complex systems, whether that's the community access line for public coverage, or it's trying to figure out how to get a referral from Kaiser and how to navigate that system. So people are really seeking that support. And we, again, do, and I want to highlight, help regardless of insurance, coverage, lack thereof, we can find options available for folks that need it. Community providers just shows you who recently we're connecting with. There's some others on here that are not listed. Important to highlight for you that CareSolus is, I guess the best term is provider agnostic, meaning we do not have a paid relationship with the providers in our database, and we do verify that they are of quality care. We incorporate feedback as well to make sure that we're maintaining high standards for the therapists that we're referring to. At the same time, we do not put one over the other or rank them. We present the options to the family based on the needs that they've identified, as well as that so critical aspect of soonest available appointment, so that we're shortening that window between someone asking for help and someone connecting to help. Next slide, please. Perfect. This is just one way. We get unsolicited testimonials all the time. I love data and numbers, but I love personal stories. And in a time right now where staff are burdened and you all have so much on your plate, it's rare that I'm proud to present a resource to staff members who are fried and burned out and don't want one more thing. It's nice to be able to provide them relief to do their job and support families and students. And it's also amazing to get positive praise in such a difficult, challenging time. And it's a way of reminding that each one of these numbers represents people who need help. And if we can make that critical connection at a critical time, it can be life changing and life-saving. I believe that's the last slide. Yep. Oh, I do have some things, since I have the attention of the board and you all are positioned as leaders, as well as the district leadership who've been great partners in terms of implementing this resource in your community. From your platforms, from the committees that you attend, the events that you are at, the parent-teacher associations that you're a part of, we really encourage, we know that successful ongoing support is achieved and utilization of us as a resource happens when we are keeping the resource fresh and connected to all the typical types of communication that the district or the schools or leaders send out. It's really important to promote this directly to your staff members as well. It is a benefit for them, and it really does show commitment to their well-being. We at CareSolus create a bunch of custom messaging. We work to make sure that, you know, we keep it seasonal, anything that we can do to make sure it's at the forefront, really so that people know about us before they need us. Because when you need help, it's the hardest time to actually figure out what to do and where to start. And so it's good just to have that in the back of your mind, so that if you see a friend or a family member struggling, you also can make that connection, because we so often accept that when we hear it from people who we know or who we see every day. So just that's my plea to promote and keep it fresh. Mental health is such a challenge right now, and access is everything. I believe that concludes our presentation. I'm hoping that we haven't gone over time. I tried to make sure I'm on pace because I know you have a lengthy agenda, but Eddie and I are available for questions, as well as your district staff. If there's anything that we can provide you at CareSolus to better promote the resource, we can be accessed through them.
Well, great, thank you. Fantastic presentation, and you guys are an amazing resource. As this is an agendized item, we will go through our normal agenda item process. So I'm going to open up to the board for clarifying questions if there's anything. This is an informational item, but any clarifying questions you would like to ask the speakers, please jump right in.
I have one. I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So CareSolus right now is available to all school districts in San Mateo County?
All public school districts in San Mateo County. Absolutely. Your partnership is really innovative and shows a strong commitment of weaving together resources and leadership to really make sure there is equity across your county. We have similar partnerships, but nothing as tremendous as what you all have pulled off. So much kudos for living where you do. I live in Santa Clara. I'm envious. I told Eddie already. It's a really awesome, so you don't have to exclude anyone based on their zip code.
Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions?
I had one question. I was just curious, when somebody needs help, what's kind of the turnaround time to where they can be matched up with someone?
So perfect. If someone needs help, I encourage them to call us. That's the best way we can get them connected the soonest. If a staff member does a warm handoff, typically what happens there too is we will respond to that family in 15 to 20 minutes. That's our average response time. And that's to get the information that they're looking so we can start that research process. The window to connecting to resources, we can identify available resources pretty quickly in a couple of days. It's really about whether or not the family answers the phone or texts us back, that we can share those and really talk through them. And so that is engagement that we really encourage so that people can get connected as soon as possible. But if they call, we answer immediately. And if there's a warm handoff, the call, unless specified, is within that 15 to 20 minute range. I find that is when people do that, they're so, like a staff member puts it in and they're like, oh, that really worked. Yes, it really works. It's amazing to feel like you have that support available.
That's great. Thank you.
Great. Any other clarifying questions?
Yeah, I just have one more question. I'm just wondering, when CareSolus first started working with our district, what did that process look like?
Great question. Actually, Burlingame, when we were presenting to them, had a similar question.
Yeah.
So, and Eddie can speak more to that. Actually, I don't think Eddie was in his role yet, so I can give the historical context. The county office, really everything is running through them in terms of the MOU and the partnership. The funding is coming from the healthcare districts as well as the county office. So the county office was really our hub and introduction to the districts we were covering. So they sent out communication to leadership to say, listen, this is what we're doing. You have this amazing resource that our partners are providing for you. At the regular cohorts of collaboration, we were present to train them on the resource, and that all started back in January. They kind of go through, I think the collaboratives are like by location, so South County, Mid County, North County. And that was a piece of it. In addition to that big, large rollout in January and connecting with touch points, we work with districts independently as well. So we would follow up with the main points of contact. We regularly check in to go through what I just did with you, utilization, to troubleshoot or to see if there's specific needs that the community might need. Like for the day you all just celebrated, the messaging attached to that and the importance of mental health for folks and equity of access, any kind of thing that the district communicates, we collaborate to provide that support.
Thank you. And just to add, Miriam, thank you. You described it really well. The purpose is to really take off any heavy lifting from your staff, right? Yeah. That's why we alluded to the extensive collateral that we have available so that it could be included. I know your district is very active in social media, or Superintendent Ochoa's weekly newsletter, et cetera. These are all excellent ideas that, again, with the various languages that we have available, could be ways to promote it and to keep spreading the good faith of CareSolus.
Thank you. Can I just say, like, I'd love some like
some collateral, some visual.
Yes. Yeah, digital. Like, I think we could like pass this out at bus stops. Like,
there are postcard size, and recently we I helped generate like a business card size one with more descriptions of like what mental health can look like, because part of it is not just knowing about the resource, it's understanding that mental health can be a variety of things. For some of us, it's dealing with transition or grief or loss. Others, it's relationship issues, or we want to perform better, right? So just kind of broadening that definition of it's not mental illness, it can be mental health, and there's ways that we can be more of our best self for us as well as our loved ones.
Okay, I have one more question and then I'll let us move on. I saw something in one of the slides around, it said like sliding scale. Was that, I think, for folks that do not have insurance? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So if someone has no insurance, and that includes public insurance, so with so there's two pieces to this, because Medi-Cal coverage is really robust and strong, and people can enroll in that regardless of status. Important to just highlight that as a resource for folks. We will help them through that complex process. That's important. So for people who also financially either don't want to do that or are looking for a sliding scale option, we will find providers that accept that. So we have a robust database of, I believe we're at about 140,000 providers, and based on what insurance, we keep it current, what insurance they're accepting, who their specialties are with, what type of therapy they provide, as well as do they provide sliding scale options based on income. And so typically that works on here's what you make, and then the therapist will give you a reduced rate that matches similar has a similar ratio, sorry, losing the language in the evening, ratio to your income.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Again, thank you for the presentation. We are going to, again, follow our normal process for agendized items. I'm going to first open up to the public comment. I'm opening public comments to those in person here tonight. If anyone would like to make a public comment on this item. No. Diego P., would you mind asking the question for those who are online, please?
If anyone would like to make a public comment on the agendized item, please press the raise your hand functionality on the bottom right-hand side of your Zoom screen. We do not have any raised hands, President Chin.
Great, thank you. I'm officially closing public comment on this item and bringing back for any board discussion comments. Again, this is not a an action item, so it's really information. Anyone would like to go ahead.
Thank you all so much for the presentation and for being here tonight and for sharing a little bit more about this program. I think it's for so many reasons so important, not just, I mean, and especially now for our students and their families. And I think, you know, everything from just access and quick access and to just, you know, long wait times if you're looking for support, you know, I think it's just a really great resource, and hearing about kind of the quick turnaround time and the lessening the barriers for folks, I think is just really critical. So I'm really appreciative for the partnership, you know, at the county level, and the fact that our district is really engaged in the process. And, you know, just sharing that if there are other things we can do, you know, as a board to support this work, that definitely hoping, you know, to continue and expand and appreciate the information that you shared with us tonight and the opportunity to learn more. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee.
Thank you, Trustee Watkins. And just to remind folks, it's absolutely available K through 12 at all schools in San Mateo County. And again, at no cost whatsoever for the next 3 years. So not only this school year, but for the next 3 years as part of the partnership.
Important two things I'd like to highlight. Best way to access care quickly, call. Second thing is some people have stigma outing themselves to a school person. You know, someone attached to grades or their social circle. And so families can access directly. That is more than encouraged, whatever it takes to get you connected. And then to respond, we will send collateral to the board and the leadership so you all can use in social media, but please reach out if there's something in particular that you're looking for that maybe we haven't offered.
Great. I just wanted to add a little bit. I think this is like an amazing program and service that's available to our families. And my hope is that, you know, you already saw an increase just from it being posted on the agenda for our board meeting. And I hope there's a much bigger increase soon to come. I will say, like, I've personally like struggled, even though, you know, I'm a school board member, even though I'm a social worker, like navigating mental health and finding someone that is a good fit. And it can all be a little bit overwhelming, definitely time consuming. And also, you know, for folks that are really needing mental health support, who are already, you know, whether it's for folks that are needing mental health support, it can be really discouraging to try to get help and then not be able to get it.
Yeah.
And so I'm just really grateful to hear about how helpful this is and how insightful, how much like intention has gone into recognizing all of the different barriers. And it just gives me lots of hope and ideas for how we can have like similar thinking around, you know, other issues in our community. This one is super, super urgent though. It's like, you know, if you don't have stable mental health, it's really hard to thrive in other areas of your life. And so, yeah, thank you so much. I'm so excited and I can't wait to tell everybody.
Oh yes, please do.
Thank you, Trustee Corso. Thank you.
I also wanted to thank you both for the presentation today. I think that when somebody needs help or they're in crisis, it's really difficult to figure out where to go, how to navigate through that. And so, and also when you are looking for help and you hear that it's a long wait or there's a lot of hoops to jump through, you kind of say, forget it, I don't need it, and I'll just move on. But hearing about this program and how quick the turnaround is and how people can easily access it, it's really great to hear. And so I am really excited to share this with people, and thank you both for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Trustee Parker.
I remember last year when we had the discussion of bringing kids back to school during the pandemic, you know, mental health weighed very heavily into that discussion and into that deciding the decisions. And I am very grateful that we are still able to offer mental health support that goes beyond what our school counselors can offer, that goes beyond what our school psychologists can offer within the confines of those positions. I think it's a very timely service and a very needed service, especially now that, we're trying to adjust to a new normal of life beyond the pandemic, or with the pandemic, I guess would be a better way to put it. Becoming friends with the pandemic, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, we need to adjust to that new normal. And this is something that we can't necessarily adjust to on our own. And yet the dialectic is we have this stigma that is around addressing mental health issues. So I love the idea that, there's many different avenues that help can be accessed, either anonymously or with a warm handoff. And it sounds like in many different languages as well. So I just can't think of a more timely service. And, I want to thank you to the Peninsula Healthcare District for offering this to the students and their families in San Mateo County.
And board members and their families as well.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well,
Thank you, Trustee Warren.
I also would just like to share my thanks. Fantastic resources, I said earlier, great presentation. You guys are really, really needed in these times, especially as we have all dealt with mental health coming back from distance learning and somewhat being isolated. I will definitely say just what I touched on earlier about our vaccination day. I mean, you can kind of see slowly where people started taking down their walls a little bit, and I think, having services like yours is also really helping as well. So I really appreciate it. And my last comment, I guess, is it's amazing what happens when you post a presentation on our agenda website and see how many extra hits you guys get and how many extra calls you get.
We're happy to come back every year and report back, President.
Maybe even every month you'd probably want. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate
staff
it.
has live access to your data, so you can request at any point, but we are happy to present, absolutely, especially because it brings awareness. And I think this conversation around how many people need help, but also that everyone deserves help. And no matter the size of the problem, you don't have to be alone with it. And so, and you can get professional help to deal with it sooner and faster and better. So anything we can do to champion that awareness, we're happy to support you all.
Yeah,
I wanted to just add one more thing. You mentioned that there's some groups that are underutilizing potentially CareSolus, and I wanted to just give a plug for our AAPI Belonging and Inclusion group, which is the subcommittee of our Sanctuary Task Force. So I'll make sure to share this info with our Sanctuary Task Force. But I just wanted to let you know that we do have that group that is working specifically with that community and advocating for, that community. So, yeah.
It's so important, especially with the racial violence that we've seen directed in the Bay Area locally. But so if there's slides that we can provide you, happy to do that too. So you have, if I could turn you all into champions of CareSolus so people get help, that would be brilliant. Any resource that you need, we're here to provide that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys again for coming. We are going to move on to our next agenda item, which is 7.1, initial presentation for the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant.
Yes, good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Ochoa. It's my pleasure to share with you for information this evening and for subsequent follow-up at the next December meeting, our planning around funding that's being allocated to the district under the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant. So, Mr. Perez, if you would go ahead and just thank you. So this is a PDF of the plan that's attached to your agendas. Just to provide a little bit of clarity, it's difficult to look at this document in isolation from the decisions we've made around AB 86 funds and ESSER 3 funds. So those were places where we very particularly were able to sort of emphasize programs and strategies and think there also about the professional development and the staff capacity to deliver on those. This grant very specifically, however, is targeting the professional development and staff capacity to deliver on the programs that we've described. Well, and I should add, of course, in our LCAP as well. So just as a kind of framing to understanding what's here, this is funding that's targeted at specifically our people, which is, one critical but not the only component to delivering programs and services that accelerate the learning of our students. So there's actually the form that we're using here is, I just would add, is actually not like a state mandated form. In fact, the state did not provide any specific template that we were to follow. However, we worked with our colleagues at DTS, and they've gone into the legislation around the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant, and they've pulled out these, call them 10 buckets of priorities that are described in that legislation. And so have devised a tool here for presenting our planning and the allocation of funding. So you can see as, and I'm just going to ask Diego if you would just scroll slowly through there. We didn't identify anything specifically in the first bucket around coaching, but in the second bucket, that's a little too fast, Mr. Perez, thank you. That the second bucket is, very specifically focused on standards aligned instruction, and particularly in literacy. You'll see a nod there to a later bucket 10, where we're talking about early childhood foundational literacy, which is an important component actually that this plan is helping with, because we've primarily in other places targeted TK to 2, and this is a chance to go earlier, frankly. So we'll come to that in a minute. But then you can see we're returning again and just basically adding opportunity to support training in the TK to 2 portion of foundational literacy work. And again, this is part of what's emerging as our transition from a balanced literacy approach to a structured literacy approach, and more to come about this. But in any case, this is our anticipating the professional development needs. Diego, go ahead to the next page. And then in the third bucket, you'll see, again, this is, you could sort of think about this as kind of most specifically related to our COVID circumstances of students coming back, and how are we re-engaging them and accelerating and addressing items of unfinished learning. So you can see a very specific investment in, call it sort of the tier 2 strategies of what does it look like both in the classroom for a teacher and in pullout circumstances or other strategies for providing so-called tier 2 target intervention. What's the work there? How do we build our teacher and paraeducator capacity to provide those supports? So, and I guess I should go back for a moment and say it's clear this is actually a grant intended for all staff. So it's not just for our certificated staff or teachers. It is meant to include the broad set of adults who touch and support students. Kind of in parallel, we've talked about the work that we know we need to do to strengthen our K-5 programs, and so an additional investment there in mathematics. There's a large investment in this in AB 86 as well as in ESSER, but this is a chance to develop even more teacher and paraeducator effectiveness there. And then, we've been talking about, and we'll talk more about our 6-8 math pathway strategies, but again, thinking about the work that we're doing and the shifts we're making and how we provide time and space and really collaborative opportunity for those teachers to build their skill and expertise. Go ahead, Diego. And then in the fourth bucket, this is a set of strategies tied to social emotional learning and trauma informed, and really, addressing the affective side of students and their readiness to learn. So very importantly, looking at ways in which we can build and strengthen our behavior intervention and support skills. So again, thinking about both our paraeducators and our teachers in a really targeted approach to, you'll note there, behavior technician certification and this kind of thing, like really is strengthening our supports there. And then also around responsive classroom. This is an approach that we've done with a handful of schools. This is an opportunity to think about it going more broadly to more schools. Again, this touches kind of the tier 1 work that every teacher would do and paraeducator would support in the classroom. And then in the fifth bucket, you'll see, kind of most specifically when we think about equity work, social justice, implicit bias work. We've just loosely described their kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion training that's meant to be, frankly, a kind of a broad category that will allow us to pursue a number of priorities within that work. And this actually amplifies on the funding that we allocated in AB 86 in our ESSER 3 budget. Diego, go ahead, please. And then in the sixth area, this is most specifically in thinking about special education and the approach to inclusion. We've talked a lot about this as a district already. This is an opportunity to do some explicit professional learning in the approach to universal design for learning. So again, kind of tier 1 strategies in general ed and in special ed classrooms to strengthen teacher capacity to deliver on a more differentiated approach to instruction. And then in the seventh area, this is kind of most specifically thinking about our English learners and really importantly, really accelerating, adding to the investments that we've made in our LCAP around the professional development for English learner strategies. Go ahead, Diego. 8, you'll see we did not identify a specific strategy, and then you get to 9, which is, we've had some discussions here in board about the move to more ethnic studies. It's right now kind of more particularly at the high school level, but there is emerging discussion about ethnic studies curriculum. We're going through social studies history adoption over the next couple of years. We want to think about how we're integrating ethnic studies or amplifying on that adoption with additional ethnic studies curriculum. And so this would be a place where we could build the capacity really primarily of our middle school teachers to deliver on that content. And then the last, as I mentioned early on, is this opportunity to build more capacity preschool before TK in foundational literacy work. And you'll see the allocation there. So just go ahead, Diego. And then part of this is kind of thinking about how do we, this is a grant that we can spend over 5 years, but how do we think strategically? You can't put all of it up front, right? That just can't be delivered on. But you'll see here an emphasis on spending the funds early in the first 2 to 3 years, and then a slight tapering of that spending across time when you get to the 4th and the 5th year. So let me stop there and take any questions that you may have. Oh, one last point. This is for information. This is a current draft of our thinking. Obviously, we want to take your feedback today as well as feedback from other stakeholders, and can imagine that when we come back to you in December, this will look somewhat different based on the feedback that we get from you.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. Any opening up for board member clarifying questions? Anyone have any clarifying questions for David?
I have one, and it's just around the behavior intervention and support. When you're talking about creating training opportunities for like behavioral intervention, BTs, are we talking of that as a tier 1 intervention, or are we talking about that as a tier 2 intervention? Like, how generalized will behavior therapists, registered behavior techs be in this plan?
Sue, do you mind if I can refer to you on kind of the details of what you're thinking about with this piece?
I think the plan is to go ahead and have the behavior support team support both general education as well as special education students. So, addressing behavior, supporting students in class to really help them remain, in the least restrictive environment, and, supporting their behaviors so that, they may not need to have an IEP for services. So it's really a function of both general education and special education.
Wonderful. That's great to hear. Thank you for the clarification.
Any other clarifying questions from the board?
I had a question about the number 10, the early childhood foundational literacy. Just wondering about, I guess the EC is for, could you just talk a little bit more about that piece?
Yeah, I mean, this again is for further development, certainly with Carrie Hazelton and the team. The thinking is that we're looking at programs, for example, that can support student literacy development at home as well as in the classroom. That could begin, well before students actually arrive in the district as TK or kindergarten students. And so we want to work with our ECE team to think about, what is the professional learning and training that they can benefit from. Particularly, we want to make sure that it's aligned to how we're thinking about the really explicit, systematic, sequential instruction that we're looking to implement. Obviously, early childhood education, it's a much stronger emphasis on phonemic awareness. We're not, the goal isn't to make babies read right off the bat, but actually just to begin those early literacy skills that we know develop in obviously before students arrive to us. So this is part of the broader sort of model of thinking about P to 3 literacy instruction. So is that,
yes,
Director Course, was that? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other board member clarifying questions? No? Okay, thank you. I am going to open up for public comment and opening up for those in the audience first. No, thank you for shaking your heads. Diego P, would you mind opening up public comment for those who are online, please?
Sure thing. If anyone in the audience on the Zoom call would like to make a public comment, please press the raise your hand functionality on the bottom section of your Zoom call. Okay, President Chin, we have no raised hands.
Okay, thank you very much. I am going to officially close public comment on this item and open it up for board final board comments and or direction. Does anyone like to start?
I'll start. Thank you, David, for sharing. I guess my comment, I guess it will be thematic from what I've been saying, which is just as we're thinking about our strategic plan, I'm thinking just about alignment and how this aligns with a plan that we haven't kind of set forward. And so I guess maybe there's a follow-up question around kind of like what would be the process for revising. So for example, I'm like looking at the early childhood piece, which I think is, absolutely something we should be investing in out of the grand total. It's a very small part of this. Should that be something that bubbles up in the strategic plan as something that people, that it becomes a bigger priority? Would there be space? And this is just, I'm just thinking out loud. I'm not suggesting that we do this, right? But I'm just kind of thinking about should that bubble up? What would be the process for making adjustments? Is that something that can happen? I want to make sure that we're, again, like really focused on rowing in the same direction and that everything that we're doing is kind of honed in on. That's why we're engaging in the strategic planning process. And so I know that there's timing around when this has to be completed. That doesn't necessarily in the same way that our equity, evaluation doesn't, like, these pieces don't always fit as neatly as we would like them to. So that was a comment and a question.
Yes. The state actually is really explicit. They're actually, expecting that they're forcing, that we need to meet a deadline of approving sort of a tentative plan, which is hopefully what the board can do in December, but absolutely expecting that there will be adjustments and whatnot as folks go through, in our case, the strategic planning process, and all districts go through their spring LCAP process. So it's explicit in all their communications that they're, put a stake in the ground now, and we understand if you're going to need to move that stake based on subsequent planning that you do. So, and from a process point of view, I think, we would do that and either through the LCAP process at the same time as the LCAP process, or, separately, we would just come back to you and say, hey, we're actually thinking about this differently and want to move some pieces around.
That's great. And yeah, I think I would appreciate having this, brought back. I think this, along with, other things that we have been hearing about and will continue to hear about post kind of strategic plan and ensuring that, that there's that alignment and adjustments should they be needed. And to the extent that there are things already coming up in the strategic planning process, are there ways that can be integrated? Maybe that's already happening. But, just again, thinking about the alignment piece of things, just I think is really important. So thank you.
Any other final board member comments? No? Okay, great. I'll just, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I'm really excited to see this plan, and yeah, I would say I think it looks really good. I'm really glad that we're, really targeting literacy. I think that's a big need that we have. We talked recently at our board and community workshop about how interconnected, like the older our kiddos get and the higher, the higher grade levels, like mathematics, like it's all language based. And so that's when you see these gaps really increase. So I'm excited that we're digging into the literacy as well as math. Yeah, I'm excited about all of the training. Can't wait to see how it all goes. Thank you.
Doesn't matter to me. I guess what I would like to just bring in too is it's great to see so much going on with the idea of early childhood education. I think a lot of people in the community especially don't even realize that we have a preschool program. It's kind of one of the best kept secrets in all of San Mateo, as evidenced by the fact of our enrollment numbers. And honestly, we've got such a great program out there. It's sad to me that we don't have waiting lists beyond Montessori's and language immersion programs. Not to mention when we talk about brain development, you know, the most brain development in a person's life is from birth to 5. And, you know, when we get students coming in to our district at 5, maybe 4.5, maybe 3 if they're in the preschool, we're getting them at the tail end of that really, really, really important neural development. And I see from what I'm reading about all this extra training that we want to put into early childhood education with the foundational literacy, looking at even math in early childhood education. It's exciting to me. It's exciting to see that, you know, this is such a huge statement that we're making as a district to say that we really want to invest in all the students and all the children of San Mateo and Foster City. I also appreciate the idea that we are looking at offering behavior technician certification, and not just offering that to special education classes, but also to students in all classes, in all, whether you're general ed or your special education, because especially post-pandemic, I think any behavioral support that can be offered in a classroom setting is amazing and is very much welcome. Not to mention having an extra adult in the classroom, I'm sure, you know, just to help students navigate that behavioral piece, so that they would have, you know, their education accessible to them, is going to be phenomenal and just such a great opportunity for our students. So I would love to see this plan as it's fleshed out and presented for a vote. It is being presented for a vote in December, correct? So I can't wait to see, you know, how this finishes out and how this looks at that time. I had one more thing real quick. You know, I know that this doesn't include kind of all parts of this plan, but one of the things, can't believe I didn't say before, is just I'm really interested to know kind of what the desired outcomes are for each of these investments, and then what kind of the monitoring and accountability pieces, right? So how do we actually know whether or not this is working towards the goal? What are specific goals for each of these? And then how are we monitoring and tracking that? And then, you know, because while this is a 5-year plan, you know, there might be things that we make a decision to pivot because they're not yielding the outcomes that we want, or there might be things that we want to continue way past that. So I'm interested in seeing that piece, yeah, interested in seeing that piece moving forward. So thank you.
Okay, thank you to the board for providing those comments. I will provide my final comments. I just, again, thank you for the presentation. I would agree with what everybody else said in terms of their comments on the grant. And well, my overall arching comment is that it's interesting to hear, and what maybe the public may not see, is that this is just specifically for the educator effectiveness block grant. But in reality, we have the LCAP, AB 86, you know, the ESSER. There's just so many different funds where the money comes in, and this is just one tiny piece of the puzzle. And so when we look at everything in terms of where all the money is going and how we evaluate effectiveness, this is just one piece of the puzzle. And I just want to bring that up to everyone. And I'm really happy we're going forward with this, and don't have any major comments on how it was presented or where the money is going. I just it's great that we have this opportunity, and can't wait to vote on it in December. So thank you for that. So all right, so that ends item 7.1. We are going to be moving on to item 7.2, which is our discussion about the math pathways. But before we actually get to that, it has been requested a 5-minute bio break. So we're going to quickly take a break right now, and then we'll come back right back and do a and talk about math. So going to bring, oh, thank you. All right, thank you everyone for that short break. We are going to bring our meeting back into session and go to item 7.2, which is the review and discussion of 7th, 8th grade math pathways. Superintendent Ochoa or David? Who's David? Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I'll step in. So thank you for, this is an opportunity, again, for information purposes to bring a staff proposal to the board regarding the middle school math pathways. So Mr. Perez, if you would go ahead and share your screen of, again, this is the deck that's attached in the agenda. All right, go right ahead, Diego.
Are you able to see the screen?
We can, yes. Go ahead to
perfect.
the second slide. Thank you. All right, so just to provide some context, we are beginning this conversation with the board action where in April 2022, where the board directed the staff to do two things. One was to create a single heterogeneous Math 6 course for all to address the challenges identified there. And then also to plan going forward 7th and 8th grade math pathways to, of course, improve overall math performance, to increase algebra enrollment, and to improve the diversity of that algebra enrollment. Go ahead. So again, tonight, we are specifically bringing to you the staff proposal regarding those 7th and 8th grade math pathways. Go ahead, Diego, thank you. And the goals of this proposal, or the pathway work that's presented in the proposal, is that by 2023-24 to meet a number of goals. These are aligned with what's currently in our LCAP, and you can see the expected increase of 8th graders enrolled in algebra, the expected increase in the percentage of Latinx students enrolled in algebra, and expectations for all 8th graders in their grades, and expectations for our Latinx students in meeting and exceeding math performance on our math CASP. Go ahead. So what we're bringing to you tonight is a proposal that's been informed by a variety of stakeholder engagements. You can see the activities in engaging families and students there. And then also, of course, we've engaged with our staff, our teachers, and site leaders in the development of this proposal. So the proposal in summary is for the implementation of 3 pathways in our middle schools. The first is a pathway that leads to algebra actually in high school. Should note that it is the recommended pathway in our state Common Core math standards, which is Math 6, Math 7, and Math 8 in each of those years. And then 2 pathways for reaching algebra in 8th grade. The first is to take Math 6 and Math 7 in 6th and 7th grade. And then in 8th grade, that a student would take 2 periods of math. And to be clear, that the Math 8 would be 2 periods of math in the fall. So my schedule might say first period Math 8, second period Math 8, third period English language arts, that kind of thing. And then in the spring, my schedule would say Algebra 1, first period, Algebra 1, second period. So to be clear, we're not talking about Math 8 and algebra being taken simultaneously, but actually the completion of Math 8, approximately 180 hours in the first half of the year, and then 180 hours of Algebra 1 completed in the second half of the year. And then the second pathway would be an opportunity for those students who would like to demonstrate a proficiency in Math 7 actually before 7th grade. So sometime in the area between February and August of 6th grade going into 7th, that a student would have an opportunity to demonstrate proficiency in Math 7 and thereby go into 7th grade and take Math 8, and then in 8th grade to take algebra. And we'll go into more detail about these in a minute. Go ahead, Diego. So just to say, the first pathway to algebra in high school, noted that it is Common Core aligned, that each of our high schools in our San Mateo Union High School District can offer a pathway to advanced placement and advanced math course taking by taking Math 8 in 8th grade. So there's still the opportunity to do advanced work. And certainly with compression in high school, even expanded opportunities. Diego, go ahead. And then this is the so-called 2-period pathway to algebra in 8th grade. Note that this is without compression. In other words, students are taking the full number of hours and time expected to complete each of the courses, but in fact are doing it by taking 2 math courses or 2 periods of math in their 8th grade year. Of course, this leads to expanded AP and advanced course taking in high school. Go ahead, Diego. So I want to take from we mentioned we mentioned in the engagement piece that we did some surveying around this, and it's important that we share with you and the public, of course, what was the response to floating this idea to our stakeholders. And you can see there rather extensive support from students. And in fact, if every student who said they would like this option took this option, we would reach our percentage goals that we outlined in the earlier slide. And you can see the family and the teacher support there. And then looking at, again, the 1-period pathway option. Again, there's this idea of demonstrating proficiency, which we'll get to in a minute. Again, this also, enables students to take advanced courses in high school. And when we asked, oh, excuse me, go ahead, Diego. And when we're talking about the ways in which we can demonstrate Math 7 proficiency before 7th grade, we're outlining several different options for feedback and for discussion. One is to offer an opportunity for students who feel that they're ready to simply take an end of course Math 7 test, and if they are able to pass it, then they could move on into Math 8 in 7th grade. Another option, and again, these can be simultaneous options, right? The key here is thinking about multiple ways that this could be, and thereby increasing the number of students who have access. One is through independent studies with optional online support. Another is the possibility of online live class outside of school. And the third or fourth rather would be the opportunity to do in-person summer school. And we actually surveyed people, our students and families and teachers around both overall support for this pathway, which you can see in the top band, and then the of those who supported this pathway, the percentages below that thought a specific approach would work well for them. And just to be clear on the survey, you could pick more than one approach, and you can see the distribution there of what people prefer. So the key, as I mentioned, of this is that if we're going to increase the number of students taking algebra in 8th grade, and we're going to increase the diversity of that, we're going to have a mix of strategies that enable the greatest number of students as possible, with certainly the guidance of their families and the support and guidance of their teachers and counselors in middle school to choose a path and an approach that makes sense to them. So we could think of this as a mix of pathways which will accomplish the goals that were outlined in an earlier slide. One thing that has come up a lot, that questions when we've engaged folks, is that, well, why accelerate, why kind of offer an opportunity to skip over Math 7? Why not do it in Math 8? And so I just want to take a couple minutes to This is a very specific decision that we're recommending because of what content is covered in these various classes. So if you look at, and we don't have to go into all the details, but basically you can notice what, Math 8 is sort of, frankly, it's sort of white in color, algebra is rose in color, and high school math, meaning algebra 2 and beyond, these are the standards that historically before Common Core were covered at those grade levels. And if you go to the next slide, just kind of following the colors, you can see how the standards have shifted down. And so the key here is that Math 8 now carries the weight of much of what was used to be taught in algebra and frankly, algebra 2. So the thought of skipping over Math 8 or accelerating at that point, it's the recommendation of the staff is not wise because there's too much opportunity for key algebra skills and understanding to be skipped over and to create, deficits in our students' understanding. So Math 7 is in content, kind of going deeper around the set of standards that are addressed in Math 6. So we're recommending that that be the point of acceleration that a student could demonstrate after going through our Math 6 class. So, and then just give you a sense of, what's coming next. Pending board approval, we know that we need to finalize the timeline and the actual steps for those options for accelerating. We get a lot of questions from families about that in our engagements, and we've tried to hold them off to say, look, we need to make sure we have board approval of this, and then we'll very quickly come back to you. We need to backward map from master scheduling deadlines and set some dates and confirm some staffing around that. So that's a big next step, but actually can't be done, in advance of board approval. Go ahead, Diego.
That is the last slide.
Oh, that is, okay. So given that, I turn it back to you for any questions.
Great, thank you for the presentation. I'm going to open up to clarifying questions from the board. Trustee Warren.
Yeah, so I have heard through multiple channels that there's quite a few students on the higher end of the academic achievement spectrum that are not feeling challenged in Math 6. And, I just want to make sure and get a little bit more of a sense of understanding as to how seriously the staff is taking into account our own students' concerns about feeling challenged, and then what steps can be taken or are being taken to address the need for challenge and rigor for all of our students, including those that are high achieving.
So just to say, this is our proposal tonight about the math pathways beyond Math 6. So I just want to emphasize that that's why you didn't see any content about Math 6. But certainly in answer to your question, yes, we have heard that feedback, certainly in the various engagements, and are taking it very seriously. Just to say, when we surveyed our Math 6 students, we found about 150 students said they didn't feel like they were being challenged enough in their Math 6 class. That represented about 14% of our students, whereas we had 65, 70% of students saying well challenged, a percentage saying it's too hard, and a percentage saying I'm not really sure. So that 150 students, though, even though it's 14, 15% is a large number. And so we are working with our math leads, and that information is being shared with our teachers. And believe me, there's a lot of discussion about what are the steps that we can take to address those concerns. This is a team that is about continuous learning, and so is taking the feedback and thinking, what are the ways in which we not only can provide more differentiated opportunities, but also communicate with students and with families how we're doing that and the scope of that work. So I think we're seeing it, one, as a real challenge, and then also as a communication challenge. How are we being clear about the ways in which students have opportunities to be challenged?
Yeah, and just to tie it back to math pathways for 7th and 8th grade, I mean, I see Math 6 at this point, from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing in your slides, is Math 6 is kind of the gateway. Math 6 is the basis. It's the great, and I hate to say it like this, but the great equalizer, in terms of we've got all these students coming from various elementary schools with various different math experiences. And now they're being funneled into one of our 4 middle schools, where, you know, there's going to be more, you know, like across the board sameness, relative. And I apologize, my word choice may not be quite correct right now, but you know, we're trying to figure out and sort through where kids are coming from and their levels of ability there, and then trying to create a foundation to go on to 7th, go on to 8th, go on to algebra, go on to AP classes eventually in high school. So yeah, I see how we structure our Math 6 and how much rigor and challenge we put into Math 6 ultimately leads into those next steps on the pathway. So that's why I just want to make sure that we're talking about that as well.
Great. Was that sorry, Trustee Warren, is that a clarifying question?
It was kind of a clarifying question, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, do you want to maybe ask, what I heard is basically additional challenge.
What I want is to hear, like, yeah, like, how are we going to do some additional challenge, and how are we going to make this challenge start in 6th grade and go 7th and 8th.
Oh, do you want me to follow up with more? Oh, okay. Apologies. I thought you were just reframing what your question was. So the work that that the team is looking at, for example, is you know, certainly the opportunity. I mean, let me try to be specific. So, for example, there are opportunities in class for students to engage in you know, sort of deeper challenge problems, right? That you know, challenge students who are ready to engage in you know, sort of extended learning. What we're hearing, for example, is there isn't enough time. I don't get to actually engage with my teacher around those, or otherwise it doesn't feel like there's time and opportunity to actually delve into that. They're given to students, but then it's kind of up to the student to kind of manage that assignment and take it on without reflect. So, you know, so some of the discussion with our teachers is, well, how do we come back and think about those differentiated opportunities in class to support students with time and, you know, basically attention around those challenge problems. So that's what we would call, that's an example of where we want to think about how we're using time and using it in a small group fashion that differentiates for different students. So that's something that's being looked at. The other question has to do with the content itself. What are the ways that we can go deeper and provide opportunities for students with each other to push the conversation and to provide other kinds of challenge problems. So one is an instructional strategy. The other would be, what are we thinking about from a content point of view? And actually, fortunately, both Math Nation and Desmos, which are platforms that we're using for illustrative math, have resources that allow us to do that. And again, remember, this is the first year that our teachers have used this content in person. And so, you know, we expect teachers to get more comfortable and to get sort of stronger at using the resources, and it's a learning and a growing process for them as well.
Great, thank you. Any other board clarifying questions?
I have a question. I appreciate the goals of the proposal that you have on, I don't know, slide 4. I was just curious, how will we kind of like track our progress on these goals throughout the years, especially now we're in Math 6. And so just kind of finding out how we know that we'll meet those targets. And then my second question was, one of the goals is 45% of 8th graders enrolled in algebra. And I was kind of thinking maybe the goal should be more about success in algebra. I mean, you can get to algebra, but maybe if you're not ready, or it may not be the best experience if someone's not ready. So I'm just curious if we're going to add any goals about maybe success. And I see there's one about C or better in math, so maybe that's part of it.
Yes, and let me just add that this is also, you know, the whole reference there. See the 2021, 22 LCAP, because you know, there's 10 other goals that relate to middle school math learning that are captured there, that just for the sake of tonight's presentation. So definitely hear that feedback. I mean, actual enrollment we think is important to track, but certainly success. I mean, because this, you know, again, this isn't about the course taking specifically, it's about the math learning. And to your point, how are we paying attention in our goals to the actual math learning? The enrollment is sort of sets up the opportunity for the learning, and then what's in fact the result of the learning. So so yes, tracking grades across the 3 grade level, that's in the LCAP. Looking at the specific groups and how specific groups within those goals are doing. So breaking, you know, not just having overall goals, but also breaking it down by key student groups is another thing that's called out here, but is also in the LCAP. So I hear that feedback and can, you know, certainly can come back and pull some of those additional performance goals or success goals out for you.
Thank you.
Any other board member clarifying questions? No, okay. I have just a couple. Just to reiterate, the goals that are on slide 4 here are directly from our 21-22 LCAP, right? So when we say 45%, it's listed there in our LCAP, and I just want to reiterate that. Also, the way I read it is, you know, it's sort of like at least, it's not like just 45%, but I'm just making that statement. In terms of, you know, we're currently at, you know, when we went through the math discussion earlier this spring, we were told, yeah, about 22% of our 6th graders or 8th graders made it to algebra. And so it's a big goal for us to essentially double it, but I've seen early data of us possibly going beyond that based off of the first trimester data. Are we going to see that at some point, or is that maybe something we can add for the next math presentation in December when we actually vote? Because from my understanding, the data that that was shown, and of course it was just right after the first trimester ended, shows that because we went to homogeneous 6th grade math, we could possibly exceed this 45% to a great degree. And so I'm just wondering, that's a direct question. Can we see it? Yeah.
Yeah, we can
Thank
bring
you
it for you for sure.
Okay. Yeah, fantastic. And then the other question I had is, there was some questions about the 2 periods in math. And so this was something new for us to have actually 2 periods in 8th grade for math, but math is not the only subject that we have 2 periods in. Is that correct? I mean,
yes, at some of our schools, particularly in 6th grade, you'll see students who would take 2 periods of English language arts. By 8th grade, we have no schools where students are taking double periods of English language arts. So just to say that is another reason why to kind of locate it in the 8th grade years, because there's some greater flexibility in that year.
So doing 2 periods in one subject is not new for our district, basically. It's something that we have done
we've done it in English
with other
language
subjects,
arts.
English
Correct.
language arts. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I think, sorry, and then when it comes to the survey, I just want to ask, so there were 2 questions of this survey. One specifically was related to the first, the double period pathway. And it says 48% of the students supported this pathway. And again, you said that if all 400 took this, then we would definitely reach our 45% goal. And then there was a second question, and I just want to be clear on this. So because, you know, when I first saw this presentation, it just seemed like the 2 survey questions were mixed, but they're 2 separate survey questions. The second survey question was specifically regarding the 1 period in algebra and essentially demonstrating proficiency to get in.
And
Okay.
you could have said, I like both of these options because they
I
were
see.
2
So
separate
yes,
questions. It wasn't an either or choice.
it wasn't an easy either or. Okay, great. That helps out a lot because when I look at the survey data, you know, the numbers don't actually sort of add up at first. So I thank you for that clarification. And I think that's all I have in terms of clarifying questions. Do you guys have anyone else? No? Okay. Okay. Thank you. So we are going to move on to public comment. We're first going to open up to those who are here in the audience. I see some smiles. I have 4 sheets of public comments. But before we do that, I'm also going to ask for those who are online, if you wouldn't mind raising your hands, if you want to provide comments as well. We want to make sure that we have ample time for everybody. And I just want to get a sense of how many people are going to want to provide public comment on this item. So if you wouldn't mind raising your hands, I see 3 people online so far. So we got a total of 7, 4, 5. Anyone else? Okay, that's 5 people online, 4 people in person. Okay, let's go with our first person on, which is Nico. Nico, and then followed by Andrew. So Nico, if you wouldn't mind taking the podium, please. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak here tonight. My name is Nico Javahari, and I'm a 6th grader at Bayside STEM. I'm here to speak about my experience in the heterogeneous math program. Many of us are not learning in any way, shape, or form. Throughout the past few months, we've been reviewing ratios, fractions, decimals, and money. A significant portion of the class has already learned this, myself included. Many of us learn math far beyond the level at which we are learning. This lack of learning has consequences already visible. I've always loved math, yet this love is slowly evaporating within this classroom, as is that of many other students. Not only this, but students that are not fond of math are being impacted under this curriculum as well. They can simply sit back and perform menial tasks without any thought required. No student in these classes is provided with the attention that they deserve, simply because the teachers are swamped with over 25 kids of varying skill levels. As a result, students must take on the mentorship role. We do this because we are pressured by teachers to teach those around us. Just a few weeks ago, the class was given a lecture on the value of our peers. We were told that not everyone was lucky enough to have learned fractions in the years prior, and that those who had should focus their time on trying to bring the class up to speed. But this is fundamentally flawed. Because I want to be helpful and cooperative, I'm a student before all else. I come to school to learn, not to teach others. Those that understand the problem at hand are often paired with those who do not. This prompts those who do not to demean themselves and compare themselves to those who do. Not only does this hurt the struggling child, but it hurts the other as well, villainizing them. Yet not the child has done anything wrong. They're simply forced to compare themselves in a heterogeneous classroom. A further issue is that advanced students are effectively being stifled, even within the already stifling curriculum. I, as well as many of my friends and classmates, have been explicitly told not to raise our hands in order to give others the opportunity to learn. This eliminates any sort of opportunity that I may have had to grow. You have said that the system is equitable, but equity is providing everyone with what they need to succeed. Heterogeneous math is not equitable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nico. Next speaker is Andrew, followed by Jotham? Jotham, thank you.
See. Hello again, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Ochoa, district leaders, and fellow parents. My name is Andrew Prock. I'm a resident of San Mateo. I have 20 years of business experience in professional mathematics, 15 years of experience as an education professional, and 10 years of experience as an education volunteer. I'd like to thank Superintendent Ochoa and the district for setting up the online town hall last night. It was a fantastic event with honest and engaging discussions. I'd like to applaud the district for laying out one measure of success, which is measurable. 53% of 8th grade Latinx students meeting or exceeding standards on the math cast. That would be fantastic if we could achieve it. Second, I want to thank Mr. Chambliss last night for clearly and directly differentiating what's happening in our school district from failures that other high-profile districts are experiencing. San Mateo and Foster City is building a path to 8th grade algebra for everyone. Now comes the hard part. It's one thing to present a goal, it's another thing to succeed. A recent Harvard survey, recent Harvard study of curricular change lays out the risks in stark terms. Change is hard, success is hard. Succeeding under change is even harder, and success under change is hardest for marginalized communities. With these risks laid out, the fundamental problem with the presented plan is that it favors acceleration for well-resourced students even more than the pre-pandemic curriculum did. It does this by emphasizing independent studies, online classes, and summer school. Speaking more directly, the changes we are making in the name of equity are on a path to backfire catastrophically. When it comes to equity, intent counts for little. It is the impact that matters. We must build honest and objective measures of success. We have not yet built honest and objective measures of success. With so much at stake, there's a temptation to redefine success. Redefining success is the surest path to the kind of failure that perpetuates inequity for years or even decades. I urge the board to insist on well-established measures of success based on mature standards. Doing otherwise will place all students at significant risk of adverse effects. Thank you.
Next up is Jotham, and then Parker is up after that.
Interesting. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Superintendent Ochoa. Basically, I have one child in GATE, so I'm yet another GATE parent with a math question. And I have two others that go to different schools. My major thing that I think you guys need to understand is that the kids who are in the GATE program are definitely academic athletes. They might have had some natural talent to get into the program, but in order to stay in the program, they have to put in hours and hours of extra work above and beyond most students. So as a consequence, during the pandemic, when a lot of students, including some children of my own, regressed a little bit, the GATE kids kept moving forward at full speed. I think it's a testament to the College Park GATE program that not only did they not regress, they came out better than ever. I would argue that that's part of the problem we're seeing here, is that they're hitting 6th grade and they're probably 1 to maybe 2 levels above their peers. And this discrepancy is causing more collisions in the classroom than usual. So in terms of actual solutions, I'd like to see the GATE kids stay together as much as possible, or any other high achieving math kids. Perhaps we're looking at 6th grade. I understand that your programs are for the future, but from a content perspective, this year, they're having a challenge. So I would prefer that if they were at least in the same classroom where they got some time off, like if their classroom was moved to the end, then we could supplement some of their learning. But I'm not as worried about the future years as I am about this year and maintaining the progress that they've already made. Thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you for that comment. Next up is Parker, and then followed by Brady.
I'm a 6th grade I'm a 6th grade student from Bayside. I'm here to talk about my 2 priorities. 1, getting into algebra, and 2, getting to learn for the next 2 years. Ever since 1st grade, I've had a love for math. And in first grade, I was getting ahead, and my teacher, Miss Andrews, allowed me to do half of my work in normal class and the other half of my work as advanced on this program called Reflex Math. Yeah, in fourth grade, I got into GATE. I learned harder math, and I was able to enjoy math further. I did fun activities which allowed me to enjoy it and engage. In fifth grade, after distance learning, I was able to come back in person, and our class started doing algebra. But now in sixth grade, it's not fun anymore. And so I'm relearning things from third and fourth grade, which most of the people most of my fellow friends are too. It's not our teacher's fault, but it's not our teacher's fault, and they're trying to balance a classroom that's like totally unbalanced. People are either really good and ahead, and some people are just really far behind and don't understand anything. I want you to know that I am okay with working in a heterogeneous classroom, but I would like if there were accommodations for all of us. We are okay with helping others, and we love to, but we want to learn as well. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. And next up is Braden.
Do I need to put on this headset? Can you guys hear me? Okay, hi, I am Braden McMillan. I've always had a love for math, just like Parker and Nico and most of my fellow GATE kids ever since I started doing extra math. In first grade and kindergarten, I didn't have extra math classes like Kumon or Mathnasium. I rather would just have my older sister teach me some math that she was learning or that she had learned a year before. Now this helped, but it wasn't really much extra because I wasn't really learning. She was basically giving me the answers. So when I was able to apply for GATE, I absolutely tried. I tried my hardest and I managed to get in. And it was very fun for the 2 years that I was in GATE. I learned a lot, but then they stopped having harder math basically, which meant that we were basically learning what we had already learned, which is killing my love for math. I used to love it, and I still do, but now I just feel bored. I feel like it's time wasted. And the challenges that we get aren't fulfilling because we don't get an answer and we don't get to go over it. Even if we had a challenge problem and we got the answer incorrect and they told us that, which they do not, we wouldn't know how we got it incorrect or even the right strategy to do it. I just want a method that teaches all kids equally and doesn't favor helping have the better kids basically, or people who know more, teach the ones who don't know less. Thanks. That's all.
Great, thank you for those comments. Any other last minute comments from those members in the public in the audience? Great, thank you. Thank you for providing your comments. We're going to segue to those people who are online. I just want to thank everyone who's provided comments here, but especially the students. It is incredible to hear you guys speak, and public speaking is not something that is easy for everyone. So I just want to make that special note. So thank you. You're more than welcome to go. Yes, you do not have to stay. If you want to, you can go home, turn it back on your screen. So thank you again for attending, and we'll shift to online now. Thank you. Okay. You're more than welcome to stay as long as you want. Okay, Diego P, would you mind bringing in the first online speaker, please?
Will do. Okay, we do have 7 hands raised. First up, we'll have Kalagi, and please correct me if I am wrong on pronouncing your name. Thank you.
Hello, I am Anshul Dandekar, a 6th grade student at Bayside. As many of my peers and my friends have addressed, the math that we're learning in 6th grade for many of us is not fulfilling. It's boring, and the challenge that they do provide is not adequately addressed. On the spectrum of on the side of boring, we don't learn anything in math. The things that the curriculum that's being taught, we've already learned, or within a couple of days we've accomplished what they need to do. However, it's being dragged on for such a long period of time, and they do provide challenge, but the challenge they provide is not being adequately addressed. They're not going over the problems in class, and they're not telling us the answers or the strategies or methods in any way, which kind of takes away from the whole experience of a challenge problem, as the whole point of it is to grow off of it. But if you only attempt it and don't get the right answer or don't get any help afterward, it's kind of pointless. Another thing is others comparing themselves to those who have that exposure to math. For example, I've had many a classmate who've sat next to me and have compared their own exposure of math to my exposure of math and started feeling bad about themselves because they hadn't learned in advance what I have. And I was lucky enough to do it, but not all of these people are, and that makes them feel bad, which it really shouldn't. And because they're feeling bad, it makes me feel bad that I'm the cause of this. Another thing I would like to address is the pathways that are provided. They're not exactly equitable, as they want you to sacrifice either time or your elective. On the side of time, you either have to sacrifice part of your summer, which not everyone can do, because what if you have things to do? What if you can't? What if you can't attend? What if you have other commitments? Then you won't be able to attend summer school. You may not be able to attend the online classes, and you may not even have the resources to do your own independent studies. And I feel like that it's not fair to ask people to, if you want to do algebra in 8th grade, to ask them to either sacrifice an elective, as the double period of math would, or sacrifice time outside of school trying to learn 7th grade math, when really it could have been done in 6th and 7th grade. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Up next, we'll have Shailaja. Shailaja,
Hi.
go ahead.
Thank you. This is Shailaja Uttam Singh. Hi, Superintendent Ukwa, all trustees, board members. I have just want to say congratulations and thank you to the kids, to recognize that the poor children, and I could see they were still in their school uniforms, was sitting there for almost 3 hours. Thank you to our beautiful kids for speaking for themselves and speaking for their friends, raising their voices and asking for what they deserve. Thank you again. You are our voice and our future, and thank you for speaking today. I have a comment and a request for call of action, Mr. Chambliss. I heard that 14% number of students that are not challenged. I think that this board launched an experiment in April 2021. By the way, there was a typo on the slide. It's 21, not 22. I think 8 months down the road, we have some half-baked results from that experiment, but there are some results regardless. 14% is not a trivial number. 150 kids that have been subjected to this experiment is not a trivial number. I would request this board to please consider that these are 150 students who have been operating at suboptimal levels, unchallenged, with their love for math unrequited. And I would request this board to please consider ways and means of providing them that challenge, an ability to restore their intellectual curiosity, an ability to restore their love for math and their love for learning, over the next 7 months of the school year. Please recognize that these kids are just as much at risk as your lowest quartile of students that are struggling. So just as you look at those children, and I'm not saying that they're not a priority, honestly, you know this, you're educators, you've seen statistics. It's not the kids that are in your median in the middle of your bell curve. It's always at the kids that are on the two ends of your bell curve that are your challenge. So my request to please look at those kids. And then finally, a question for Mr. Chambliss. Thank you for presenting those 3 pathways. In math, we greatly appreciate that there are a variety of options. My question is specifically about the third option, which is either taking a test to skip Math 7 or to, did I get cut off? Is it a test to skip Math 7 or to skip that grade?
I'm sorry, Shyla, but the time is up. I do apologize.
Just 10 seconds, please. How do you plan to address gaps in learning due to skipping a grade? Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, and up next, we have Marissa McCurry. Marissa McCurry, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here again. It's not 2 a.m., but still late in the evening, and I appreciate all the work that each of you has done month after month as we are still all adjusting. I am relieved, frankly, to see a couple of pathways proposed here that we were promised in the spring might come about. Still, I want to address a bit of the process for how we got here, because I think that's why you're hearing so much feedback from the 6th graders here, because the concern is that the process used for 6th grade that leads to your 14% failure might also be baked into the process we have here for the 7th and 8th grade math. As I watch your faces, I can see that this is either a late evening or that your attention is not on the children speaking to you now. The reason you have children speaking to you at a board meeting well past their bedtime is because you didn't listen to the parents. We may have been 100% completely wrong, but when we don't feel heard, we don't understand. What you have before you and have had before you for months are numbers of parents who are scared for their children and who want their children to have the best education possible in a public district that's a challenge with such a variety of children and children's needs. But what you have is not just parents who want what's best for their children, what's best for all children, notwithstanding some of you board members specifically telling us parents otherwise, each of us deeply devoted to all children's education, which means we're not just parents who want to speak, but who have resources. Not just privilege, resources. We will dedicate our time and our money and our energy to a solution that will fit all students. And when we feel disenfranchised, that doesn't help all students. We care about equity, and we recognize that the teachers probably do carry more expertise than we do on what needs to be done. But when we are left out of the conversation at the planning stages, we can't trust the process. When I sit and speak to a teacher who is deeply, enthusiastically behind my student getting the best education possible, we can talk about solutions. We have not been afforded that opportunity. I had a teacher conference today, and when that teacher and I sit and speak, I think we have good ideas that could be put in action. But when you invite our feedback to you, and then tell us what the teachers are telling you, you're not getting the conversation that needs to happen. Namely, teachers and parents working together, not put at odds in a meeting like this where our children are put in front of their teachers to have to speak their piece. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have Joy. Joy, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Joy Shmueli. My son, Caden, sitting right next to me, attends Bowditch Middle School. I appreciate the opportunity to both listen to the options and offer some feedback. From the get-go, I was disappointed in the decision to lose the pathway that was, especially without a plan, because now I feel like it's very discombobulated. More than anything, the previous pathway did not come at a cost to the students. In the pathways proposed, one doesn't offer them algebra at all. In the other two, students are potentially sacrificing something to take a class they once had a pathway to without sacrifice. Not allowing students to take algebra leaves students who are fully capable not reaching their full potential. Is that what we want? And yes, some could even take geometry by 8th grade by their capabilities. But many of our children have already flown through math without any effort this year. Like one of the students previously mentioned, if they take the first pathway that gets them to algebra, they lose an elective, which means they can't take, for instance, both band and a language. And those are both also pathways to high school classes. That's a sacrifice on their behalf because of the district's choices. One of the great things about middle school, and I worked in middle schools for 17 years, is the ability to explore interests. This takes that option away. In the last option, which to me has the most potential because there are multiple options for families, we are going back to one option of what was. You could test in, which is what used to be. So what is that accomplished other than compressing more math into less time? For many of our students, the easiest class to compress would have been 6th grade. I still believe many of our students can waive 7th, but 6th grade should have been the obvious choice. For the students who would have tested in from day one, this seems like an unnecessary postponement. Thank you, Trustee Warren, for asking your question about rigor. I think that was something that should have been addressed when we took away the pathway originally. How would we challenge our students that are mathematically inclined? My child was disappointed when the opportunity was revoked for him to be in a compacted math pathway starting in August. He feels that the inclusion of some in a heterogeneous math should not affect the students who not only felt they were ready for a challenge, but actually were ready. He's spoken with many others who feel the same way. He loves math. He's always asked for more, wanted to learn beyond his grade level standards. His ability has sometimes left me astounded. He's spoken with many, he is an identified GATE student who chose his homeschool rather than Bayside and was told this would be the time that challenge would appear. Sadly, it is not. I do respect and admire our equity lens, but I still believe we've missed an opportunity for many of our students who were already ready. We could have done both concurrently, if that's still an option now, if that's already now still an option for our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have Ali. Ali, go ahead.
Hi, my name is James Ross. I'm a student at Bayside Academy, and I would first like to say that I think we have some good options here, and even though they're not perfect yet, I think that it's good that we have several different pathways because we have such a diverse district. And I'm glad that we are looking like we're going to be able to get a lot more kids to algebra because I think that is really important. I would like to make the point though, as a couple of my friends and the other students have made earlier, that we're not feeling challenged in math right now. And it's great that we have plans for the future, but right now in 6th grade, we need to do something about math. And there are so many small things that we could do to improve our math experience because I really don't want to spend a year just relearning standards that I've already learned in 4th grade and in 3rd grade. So I just feel that it would be extremely helpful if we could make improvements to the 6th grade math program that we have right now. And even just small things, like honestly, we are given challenge problems every week, but it would be really great if we could have an answer key to go along with them. Like even that would improve our math experience so much because right now we do challenge problems and we don't get an answer key for them. We don't get an explanation at all. We have no idea what we're doing. And like, for example, I did a challenge problem earlier today, and it was about adding ratios. And I had no idea how to do that. I came up with an answer that I thought was right based on my reasoning. I checked it later against, I looked up the actual way to do it and talked to my mom about it. It turned out to be completely the wrong way, but I would never have known, because based on my reasoning and what I knew before I started that challenge problem, the way I had done it would have been the right way. So I'm just trying to make the point that we need more rigor in math classes, and just challenges alone are not enough, because I could have done that challenge the wrong way and I would never have known if I hadn't gone and researched it myself. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Up next, we have Randy. Randy, go ahead.
Good evening. First of all, I want to really thank the students who have spoken. They've spent their time and their effort, not just tonight, but in previous engagements, to communicate to you about their experience and their hopes. And I hope you're really, really listening. And I appreciate their time. So in this past spring, the engagement that was done by the district, by a couple of trustees with stakeholders, with parents of stakeholders, this was not a 360-degree engagement. This engagement was unidirectional. There was a plan that was evangelized, and that message and that plan remained unchanged. The feedback that you were getting was not incorporated into that plan. Families and students were promised that work on these middle school pathways and engagement would occur between springtime and now. However, engagement has only happened, and in a performative manner, over the past several weeks. You've heard from some of these experimental subjects, students, yet the plan that was conceptualized for the pathways way back last spring, and we can go back and look at those presentations and those meetings, that plan remains unchanged, uninfluenced, unperturbed by stakeholder feedback. The district staff talk about having a growth mindset, but what I see really reflects a fixed mindset to this approach, unable, unwilling to incorporate any sort of feedback from the key stakeholders. Here are the problems with this plan. These pathways do not equitably meet the needs of our middle school learners. There is no way of measuring success or failure of this experiment for a couple more years. The district has oversold the success of this plan so far, saying that based on a 16-question formative assessment, just a few weeks into the school year, they can tell the percentage of students who will make it to algebra. That is ridiculous. Unfortunately, our entire district and community has paid a price, is paying a price, and most importantly, our middle schoolers, if you continue with this right now and over the next several years, will continue to pay that price. It's really too bad.
Thank you very much, Randy. Up next, we'll have Rasneet. Rasneet, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Veer Chaudhary, and I am a 6th grade student at Bayside Middle School. I'm advocating for access to advanced math for myself and others. I have a sister who is a freshman in high school, and because she took an advanced class in middle school, she is now in Algebra 2, which is a course that actually challenges her. Kids like me, on the other hand, who won't get a chance to advance courses in middle school, will have two options. First of all, we could take courses that don't interest us and, more importantly, don't teach us anything. Or we could spend our whole summer, that should be a break, doing a course online. Another problem with the normal courses are that we often finish work early and the period quickly turns unproductive as we sit idly with nothing to do, or just talk to another friend that has finished work early. In GATE, I was challenged and pushed forward. I used to have an extreme love for math, which I still do, though it's quickly evaporating as I relearn things that I've already been taught. Also, if there is an advanced class, we will be partnered with kids that think like us and push our brains further. I personally have been paired with people that don't understand the work, and while I should be learning, I'm busy explaining what the teacher has already said. I'm not a tutor, and my job is not to explain the classwork. I'm supposed to be learning in school. As my sister has told my family more than once, in high school, if you don't take advanced classes, you are doing the bare minimum, which is not good enough for colleges in California, as most of them no longer look at SAT and ACT scores, but instead the number of advanced classes you took and what your grades are. Another thing is that since AP classes are offered in high school, it should not be different to offer them in middle school. If there aren't advanced classes in middle school, by the time we get to high school, we would be playing catch up instead of getting ahead, unable to make use of classes being offered. Meanwhile, other kids from neighboring districts will be more ahead than the very school that offers the GATE program. I would propose an advancement in the current 6th grade math program. Thank you for your time and all the work you have put in over the past few months.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Up next, we have Saz. Saz, go ahead.
Good evening, Superintendent. Good evening, Board. My name is Saz Asudani, and I'm a student at Bayside Academy as well. I'm a 6th grader. So my classmates have already talked about how the current math classes are very boring. We're not learning everything. How math, for some of us, math used to be our favorite subjects, and now we dread it. I keep finding myself looking at the clock every 2 or 3 minutes waiting for it to be over. It's that boring. But my classmates have already talked about that. I want to propose a counter plan for the current pathways, as I believe they're all flawed. And I also want to talk about the unjust justification for why the compacted math program was removed in the first place. So the first justification that was used was equity, that it's not equitable to have a compacted math program. But equity is defined by Merriam-Webster as a justice according to natural law or right. In other words, giving everybody equal opportunities. You are not giving us equal opportunities. You are basically robbing some of our learning. Instead, you are confusing equity with equality. You are you're acting like there is equality in math skills. However, this is not true. Everybody is at a different level in math, so you can't tell a group of students to build a log cabin when some of them don't know how to build a foundation and others have already been building mansions. And for a counter plan, before this program was removed, the district used to have a program in which students would learn Math 6 and half of Math 7 in 6th grade, the second half of Math 7 and Math 8 in 8th grade, and Algebra 1. Sorry, the second half of Math 7 and Math 8 in 7th grade, and then Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So I'm not sure why this is an option for compaction, because this seems a lot more ideal than the pathways that are being offered right now, because again, some of them have accessibility issues, like the summer school ones and the online courses ones. The 7th grade Math 7 proficiency test could leave holes in learning for Math 7, and the double period of math in 8th grade could causes us to sacrifice our elective. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you so much. Up next, it actually looks like we have raised hands from same commenters. Just so everyone in the public is aware, we do have the opportunity to give everyone 3 minutes per agenda item, just so that everyone is aware. So up next, we'll have Mendel. Mendel, go ahead.
Hi, my name is David Mendel. Thank you all for this evening. I just have a couple of questions. One is with the paths of really blowing through 7th grade. The one thing that hasn't really been explained is why 7th grade is so much less important, that it can kind of be blown through. And so that's kind of question number one. And number two is more of a comment that as there are, which I think is great, that there's multiple paths to achieve algebra by 8th grade. One thing that is okay is to kind of reflect and say, you know, maybe what we did before was not the right answer, to just get rid of compacted math and to have an additional path of returning to a compacted option could be and maybe should be a 4th option in addition to these other 3 paths. Thank you much.
Thank you very much. And with that being said, we have no further comments. President Jin.
Okay, thank you everyone for providing your comments, and definitely thank you for the students who provided their comments both in person and online. I am closing public comment on this item, and we're bringing this back to the board for discussion and further direction to staff. As I understand it, this item will come back for an actual vote in December at our December 16th meeting. So any additional comments would be appreciated to staff now. Would anyone like to go first?
I can go first. I wanted to first thank the students that spoke tonight. I don't know, you guys all can't see what we're doing, but we're all taking notes. And so if it appears that we're not listening or looking at the screen, that's what we're all doing. So thank you. Well, they all left the room, but thanks to them when they were here. And I wanted to just talk about a few things. I know that the presentation was on the math pathways, and we heard a lot of comments tonight about students that aren't feeling challenged in their math class this year. I think, you know, obviously that's an issue. If students are not feeling challenged or feeling bored, that's something that we should address. But what's also an issue are students that are really struggling and need additional support. And so I think when we talk about math and we talk about equity, yeah, it's making sure all students are getting the supports they need, but we also have to kind of prioritize and like triage is what I kind of think about it. And so if we're able to provide some additional challenge for students, that would obviously be ideal, but I don't want to lose focus on those students that really need additional support and that are struggling. And we're trying to get them to either successfully complete Math 8 or successfully get to algebra. So I think we have to, you know, balance here. In terms of the pathways, I think I just want to address that the original way that we had the pathways, it was almost impossible for a student to decide in 7th grade or at the end of 7th grade that they wanted to take algebra. You couldn't do it. You had to do it. You either had to get into compacted math in 6th grade or get into the 7th grade bridge and compacted math. And I like that these pathways offer a chance for a student who may just need a little bit more time in the Common Core 6th and 7th grade math to take algebra in 8th grade. I think that achieves our goal of getting more students to algebra. Again, I want to focus on the fact that we don't just want students to get to algebra, we want them to be successful and send them off to high school well prepared. So actually, I like that pathway. I think also, you know, it's unfortunate that students may have to give up an elective to go that pathway, but it is a choice, and it's something that students need to weigh, and they need to say, is this the path I want to go on, or is it more important for me to take electives? And I think that's just the way it is, right? The way that we have it laid out here. And so I'm sorry to some of the students that may have to give up one of their electives for that option, but it is an option to get there. I think that's all I have to say, really. I appreciate that there's multiple pathways and students can kind of go with whatever direction they have. I did want to say that it's perfectly acceptable for students to take 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math. I think you can still be successful in high school and college and there's opportunities for everyone out there, and we're all going to make it. So that's it.
I could follow. Trustee Proctor. Yeah, so I guess one thing I kind of want to start with is this concept of rigor, which we have heard a lot about. And one thing I'm realizing, the more that we're hearing conversation about rigor from our educators, from district staff, from students, from parents, is I actually don't think that we all have a common definition about what that means in math. And I wonder what we can do to support families, our students, our board potentially, and really what does that look like, right? So the way we all learn math is really different. And yeah, so that's just kind of one thing that's been swirling around for me. I mean, I think we heard from a lot of students tonight. Oh, I wanted to start with saying, yes, thank you to all of the students. I definitely know that when I was in middle school, I was not speaking at a school board meeting. I don't even think that I knew that a school board existed. And so getting up in front of a lot of people is a huge deal. And so continue to advocate for yourself and speaking your truth, you know, kind of regardless of what happens, you know, and all of that. Like, it's really important to continue using your voice and speaking your truth. So thank you so much for being here, speaking virtually. I did want to start there. We have heard a lot from our students about how Math 6 isn't rigorous. We have heard from our educators and our district staff that it is rigorous. And that kind of leads me to feel like, how are we actually defining what rigor is? The other thing that I will point out that I know, you know, some of our students tonight spoke about how sometimes they don't know the answers to the problems they're given, which actually leads me to believe that there must be some rigor happening, right? If you don't actually know the answer to everything, but maybe there's more support around what we kind of do with our follow-up to challenge. So, you know, I think I will also point out that the majority of student comments that we have heard today and that we heard at our board and community engagement are focused on one school site and the experience there. And so I do wonder about, you know, we have lots of math classes at lots of school sites across two cities. And, you know, just wanting to make sure that we're kind of keeping that perspective as well. I will say, and I said this, Trustee Corzo and I were part of a board and community workshop this weekend where we heard feedback around math. And I said something very similar at this time, at that meeting, which is, it does feel really frustrating as a board member we have spent a lot of time on this topic. And it does not mean that the experience of our advanced learners is not important. It is. I was a GATE student. I completely understand that perspective, but we have spent a lot more time. I don't know how much, you know, time, what percentage more. It's a significant amount more time speaking about the experience of our advanced learners in math than we have about our students that are struggling in any subject over the past multiple months. And that is not okay. So I want us to shift this conversation. And I don't feel comfortable continuing to have this conversation. We need to have a conversation about how we're increasing rigor for all students. We need to have a conversation about how we're increasing access for all students, how we're supporting all students. But we can't continue to spend a significant more of our district time and resources and our board's time and resources only addressing our high achieving students. And so as we continue to go down this pathway of math, if we are an equity-minded board, we need to think about what that means in terms of the conversations that we're having and where we're spending our time. As we think about the goals that were set out, I'm appreciative about the goals. I know Trustee Proctor mentioned this. You know, how are we monitoring that? What's the accountability going to be? You know, I liked the idea of having the achievement goals, right? So it's one thing for kids to get into algebra. It's another thing for them to be successful in algebra. What does that look like?
also, how are we working towards that at each level, right? So what does that mean we do in 6th grade math to really encourage and boost students that maybe haven't traditionally been able to access those pathways? In terms of that 7th grade year, what does that mean that we're doing in terms of providing access, resources for kids that maybe don't have the ability to access additional courses or to do the independent study or whatever the case is, right? How are we actually ensuring that we're increasing access at each of those points? And I want to see that data as we move through this, because if we're not doing that, then it's true, this is not working. If we are doing that, then we can continue to have this conversation, but I think we need to be looking at that in a very consistent way. Because that is the goal that we are committed to. That's the reason why I supported this in the past, and I want to make sure that our data aligns to that. I also just want to comment on the fact, and I think Trustee Proctor maybe just mentioned this a little bit, that that we talked a little bit about that we've heard a lot about sacrifice and what students need to sacrifice. And I do just want to say that our students who are behind have always had to make these sacrifices. Stay after school, miss an elective, always have had to make these sacrifices. And we haven't had hours of public comment about that, right? And so that's kind of what I mean when I say where we're spending our time. And again, it doesn't mean, I firmly believe all of our students need to have access to rigorous math. We need to ensure that we have the proper supports for our students that are struggling. We need to ensure that our students that are high achieving are pushed and feel like they're being challenged and have access to that rigor. But we can't only be having that conversation, and that is the only math conversation that we have had on this board for the past year. I guess I'll end with that. But for me, we need to change the dialogue.
I'll be fairly short. I also want to thank the students for speaking, parents for taking some time out of their night to support their kids in speaking and sharing their own perspectives. It's very natural for parents to advocate for their kids. At one of our engagements recently, we did have a parent ask a question around, I'm not gonna get the words exactly right, but basically, if other parents don't show up and advocate for their kids, then maybe they don't care to, and that thinking is problematic, right? It does not take into account the reality of a lot of working class families that are really struggling to meet the basic needs of their families and who most definitely care about their kids and their kids' education. We are a public school district, and we have the responsibility of meeting the needs of all kids. And, there's a lot of work to be done in those areas. We do offer our students math foundations classes who are really struggling in mathematics in middle school. The burden on the idea that, students are pressured into teaching other students. There are math foundations classes, like teachers are prioritizing, maybe sometimes, right, like prioritizing the needs of teachers are prioritizing based on the most urgent needs for the biggest number of students in their classrooms, and that is that's maybe a part of the reality, but there is definitely, I also just want to share, like in our math 6 class now, we're getting to the end of the first half of the school year, right? We're getting somewhat close to it. There's a whole other half of it to go, right? So the point that I'm trying to make is that there have been sacrifices that, like Shara said, students have had to make historically that we're kind of not realizing, right? Like the compacted math 6 course before, the compacted math course in 6th grade before actually did take away resources for other students to, and for teachers to be able to like teach more math foundation classes or focus on preparation for, meeting the needs of all students in a heterogeneous class. And so the shift away from that is part of how we, how we prioritize equity. And I know I think sometimes like some misconceptions about equity, but I always think about this visual that's super helpful. Ken, it. We did a training through the Equity Network for San Mateo County School Boards Association, but it's basically the idea that, when there are gaps with students, you actually, when you focus on supporting students that are struggling and they move up, then everybody can move up together, right? But if you focus on, if you focus here and then this divide is only getting bigger, when if you just, if you focus more on the kids that need it the most, then everyone, I'm butchering it. So Ken, please feel free to correct me. But also, I'm not feeling super well. So if I'm not very eloquent right now, I'm going to blame the cold I'm fighting off for that. I want to say that I'm supportive of the pathways. I think that is the conversation that we're here to have tonight, right? How do we move forward? How do we create pathways for students to get to algebra? That was always our goal. I understand that there are families and students that really want to advocate on bringing back a program or a class that we don't have right now. And I think we are moving forward. We are moving on to our pathways. This period of transition is a little difficult. It sounds like, we do need to make sure that we are challenging kids. Also, we probably, next year we'll have many lessons learned and we'll be better able to do that. And, many of the kids that need to be challenged more will have opportunities to do that, right? They will have opportunities, and they have a variety of opportunities. But we also want to make sure that we have those same opportunities for a more diverse group of students, because that is part of what we want to encourage as well, right? I do also want to say that, I've talked with our math team, and as a parent myself, having a 5th grader, right? This is a choice that I have to think about myself very soon. I want to make sure, my kid really loves math too. As a parent, I have to make the choice of, what should I push him to, get to algebra in 8th grade? And I just want to make the point that like, there's nothing wrong with doing just the math 6, math 7, math 8. Kids are still really young in middle school. They will have opportunities to accelerate. They're not going to miss out on college opportunities because they're not, doing algebra in 8th grade, or because they're not doing even more accelerated math in middle school. Those opportunities will be there. So I'm going to stop there. I said it was going to be short. Definitely was not short. Sorry.
Okay. We've heard so much tonight. And, I really appreciate all of our students that took the time to address us. Yeah, I don't think I would have done that as a middle schooler. I probably would have written something out and told my mom to go do it. So kudos to all of those middle schoolers who spoke tonight. As I was listening to the students and just some of the things that have just been floating in my mind, even from when I've first heard these plans back in the spring, I am concerned about, the rigor of the program. I'm concerned about the challenge. I'm concerned for our teachers who now have potentially like basically running a one-room schoolhouse for math with all sorts of different abilities. You know, and just trying to be able to teach to that effectively within that period of 45 minutes to an hour. I want to make sure that we are, you know, looking out for our teachers who are tasked with bringing math to life for these students. You know, something as the discussion went on tonight, I kept thinking back to our last board meeting where we discussed the annex and, you know, how we could make, you know, give that program just a little bit more oomph to it and make it not as, I mean, yes, it's babysitting, yes, it's childcare, but adding something to it. And, you know, for those that are there, I don't see why that couldn't be used as a place for math enrichment, for creating an opportunity for academic acceleration. We spoke about ACES grants and spots and how at this point it seems to be somewhat underutilized and not necessarily used effectively. I mean, perhaps that would be something to consider for the future. Another thing that just came to mind too is just the reality of ability does transcend.
Recording in progress.
It's just
Sounds like we're recording.
Yep. He says, okay. Okay. All right. Hang on, let's everybody come back. Okay. He gave us a thumbs up.
Because right now it's the ASL. Where is that from?
Okay. I want to thank everybody for your patience. As we dealt with that, we did get an audio cue that the recording was off, and so therefore we had to take that pause. So Trustee Warren, I believe you're still on at the moment. So please go ahead.
Okay, well, I don't have much more to add. Just, you know, somebody had brought up, you know, one of our public speakers had brought up the idea of a bell curve. And in listening to the what students feel like we're doing right, sounds like we're meeting that bell curve, but now we need to look at the outliers and the outliers on both ends of that curve. And I hope that what we're presented in December will address that. And that's it.
Great, thank you for everyone for providing your comments. Before I make my final comments, Superintendent Ochoa, do you want to make a comment? So I'll let you go ahead and then I'll wrap things up.
Thank you, President Chin. I'm going to share some numbers with the board and with the community. The first is at Bayside Academy. This is for Math 6 specifically. The school year is broken into portions. It's segmented when teachers assign grades to students. Multiple comments have been made or references have been made to the sort of the district's analysis of one assessment that was given. I want to remind the board, you know, we're 11 weeks into the school year, and so there's so much more for us to do in terms of the teaching and learning that's taking place in our math classes. I want to assure you other assessments are forthcoming. The results of those assessments are going to be shared with you. But we do also assign grades to students in this district, and those grades are really important because they're sort of a thermometer, if you want to say, of, what kind of work are kids doing? How engaged are they in class? How many of them are finishing homework? How many of them are really struggling? So at Bayside Academy for 6th grade math, the first number is 9, and that number refers to the number of students who have a D or F in their math 6 class. And the second number is 173, and that is the number of students at Bayside who are taking 6th grade math, we're getting an A, B, or C in 6th grade. So for me, those two numbers are very dark. There's a very, very strong distribution of numbers, heavily tilted towards students earning a passing grade, and really doing well on the grading side. And as you know, we saw some positive results on the testing side, because the grade is comprised of a combination of classwork, homework, tests, and quizzes. But then the assessment itself has its own value and its own analysis. And I want to assure you that at that school, the achievement results in those teacher grades far exceed the achievement results in English 6 and Science 6. In other words, what we're seeing in that course, which is in some ways, statistically, it's a bit unusual. It's more common to see a struggle in the math content. So we're really excited about that. I also want to assure you that it's not solely taking place at Bayside, that this distribution exists at other schools as well. So the numbers at, let me just make sure I'm accurate. Numbers that I wanted to make sure was clear because I have multiple reports with me tonight. Those numbers, those corresponding numbers at Abbott are 6. There are 6 6th graders at Abbott Middle School who currently have a D or F in their Math 6 class, according to the last grading period. And Abbott, as you know, is bigger in terms of the middle school student population. And at Abbott, there are 231 students in 6th grade earning an A, a B, or C in 6th grade math. So we're looking positively on those results. And then I'll also share with the board the distribution at Burrell, and that distribution is 14 with a DRF. And then, as you know, Burrell is really big, so it's close to 280 students with an A, B, or C in their 6th grade math class. I think those numbers are an important piece of the conversation. They don't tell the whole story, but I just wanted to share that with the board.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent Ochoa, for the data input. So I'm going to sum things up. I'm going to first address sort of equity as a whole, and then I want to talk about actually what we're here to talk about, which is the pathways, specifically what you want feedback for. And Trustee Corza, you beat me to the punch because I was going to do that same thing, but I explained a little bit different. So
you can do it, Ken. You're going to do it better than I did.
Know,
Go for it.
So there is a question about equity and how we define equity and educational equity. And there's always, and how do you define it in a simple way? And there's always 2 ways that I sort of do it. And the one that Trustee Corzo alluded to is, well, first, equity is we want to provide the tools and resources, the tools and resources and the needs for all students to be successful, right? So that's just the basics, right? But the representation is, there's, in the simplest form, there's, and this talks about educational equity, student achievement, there's generally 2 groups, right? Doesn't matter, there's just 2 groups there. And the idea essentially is, what we want to do is bring this group up, right? But that bringing this group up does not mean bringing this group down. What we actually want to do is we want to have achieve success for all. We want to increase the rigor for all. It doesn't mean that this group just comes up here and hits the ceiling. It means that we go up here and we all succeed. So it's bringing everybody up. And that's what we talk about, how we want every student to succeed, how we want to close the student achievement gap how we talk about educational equity, this is it in its simplest form, right? Generally, two groups, simple form. It's not just bringing this group up. It's not bringing this group down. It's not bringing the group up to just this limit. It's bringing this up, and then everybody goes up as well. So that's how I sort of look at it. And what we heard today, not about the pathway specifically, but we heard about this group from our students, who again, thank you for providing your comments, because it is a very difficult thing to provide public speaking in a forum, and then also staying up late on a school night. So I really want to appreciate and thank the students for that. But we've heard, and what I've heard in previous meetings, or at least in a separate meeting outside of our board meeting, is that there needs to be more challenges. Specifically in the program, these students want more challenging challenges and more rigor. So our job essentially is, we've heard the students and we need to provide that. So as a whole, just as direction, just like after I had the meeting with them earlier this week, is that we need to go back, look at what we can do to provide these students a little bit more rigor. So that would just be my overall direction just on that, and the students that provided their comments. So again, thank you. But in regards to the actual pathways themselves, we have sort of talked about these pathways for a few weeks now, whether not necessarily in the board format that we are in tonight, but through the board community workshop, through YouTube Live, through a number of different outlets. I first talked about it in some way as at our Borrell board and community workshop with Trustee Warren, and we had a group of 30 or so parents who were there. And so this is what it was talked about. I personally don't have a problem with the pathways. I think that what we did is good. I think what really sold me on it is when you look at the number of who we had going into algebra, because of the compaction and the pathways that we had before, where there was only 22% of our entire district was only getting to algebra. Here we have the opportunity, because we put everyone to heterogeneous math, because it's the actual math teachers who are teaching it, right? We have a way to actually assess them. And per our early data, which I really hope that we can bring back, and which you guys confirmed at the next meeting, shows that this is working. And if everybody were to go along the track, regardless of which pathway they choose, we are going to have a much higher percentage of students who are going to be eligible for algebra. Now, that may not mean that they want to take it, because maybe they don't want to give up the elective, or maybe they don't want to actually test it. Maybe they want to just take it in high school, right? But the fact is, we will have more than 22% of our 8th graders being eligible for algebra. And so when you go back to the initial meeting of our math teachers back in May, when they talked about being scientists and NASA engineers and mathematicians, early data suggests that we can hopefully move our needle to make sure that we can have more students in algebra. And so I have absolutely no problem with the pathways. I think it's great. I think it's the fact that we're providing choice is really good. The one issue that I have, and again, it's not about the pathways, it's about the implementation now. And so the question that I have in the comment is, as we roll this out, and as we go ahead and provide choice for the parents, what is it, the steps that is going to happen, right? We know that we have to back step or back map it, because we have to assign the classrooms, we have to do the master scheduling, we got to get the teachers. There's those steps that we work backwards from. And so the idea is, at what point, what's the timing of when we're going to ask the parents, the students, and everyone to choose? And are we actually going to ask them to choose? Because I hope we are, because basically we've provided a survey for our families, for our students, to see what they really want. And the idea is, one, when are we going to ask them? Are we going to have enough data to do it? And two, is there going to be a recommendation from the teacher? From my understanding, there is. And it's like, how does that come across, right? How does that get presented? Because the idea is, it's great to have these pathways, but it's how we implement these pathways from now on is the issue. And so that is the sticking point, where I think that we could have planned all we want, right? We have the data that's coming in. We've done all this work, but until we actually implement it, until we actually make sure that parents and teachers and everyone who we've asked to provide comments and input on, until we actually make that point, and until we actually sign the classrooms and everything else like that, I'm still anxious. and so I think to me, it's the pathways is good. I think the early data that you've shown, everything is good. I think we'll see other things when it comes to December to actually vote on this. But what I would like is sort of the implementation steps. Because what I don't want is, again, have all the work that you guys have done, which is fantastic work, all the work that the teachers have done, all the comments that everybody's provided with their family, students, or the students who provided here tonight, or everyone online, to all of a sudden sort of go up in smoke because maybe we didn't implement it right. So those are my comments. And I just want to end with that, but I want to, before we move on, just to make sure that there's no other final board member comments on this topic, it is up for vote. We are going in December. So for anyone who's listening, and then also, I'm assuming Superintendent Ochoa, that between now and our December meeting, there may be some additional YouTube lives about it, or a board and community workshop, or Cafe Con Diego. I'm assuming that our outreach doesn't necessarily end tonight. We're going to take back the comments that we've heard. We're going to listen. We're still going to do some refinements, I'm assuming, and then we'll bring that all back in December. Is that right? Okay, thumbs up. So that's good. Okay, so
real quick.
Yep.
I guess
Trustee Corzo.
I heard Trustee Watkins ask for like a shift in direction in terms of time and resources, et cetera, about math. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that piece. Make sure we have like consensus around what that path forward looks like exactly.
Sorry, do you guys want to answer that, or do you? Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I mean, happy to address that. I mean, we do have this item in front of us for decision that will take, additional conversation at board meeting. We certainly can come back to you with, I think if I heard Trustee Watkins correctly, it was identifying, what's the work that's being done in support of our struggling students, some opportunity to talk through, the strategies and what's being done in that respect. So guidance from you all, we can figure out how to agendize that and bring that up for conversation. Did I hear that correctly? I mean, hopefully that addresses the question.
I guess the way that I understood it was like can we focus like any engagements more on like just the pathways and how we're supporting our struggling students versus I guess like I don't know. Shar, do you want to clarify what you were thinking?
Clarify what part of what I was thinking?
I mean, you were saying that like we have spent as a district and as a board and our staff, right, have spent a lot of time talking about math, specifically in terms of how it's not like how some students and families feel like it hasn't been rigorous enough in 6th grade specifically, and like turning our focus to how we're helping our most struggling students, or like just like the pathways, or like shifting the conversation a bit in terms of how much time we dedicate.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I was trying to say is I think in these conversations where we've only been talking about our most advanced students as a part of this conversation in math versus rigor for all students, how we're supporting all students, how we're supporting students that aren't currently achieving in math to become proficient, how we're supporting students that are kind of in the middle to become students that can that can help us get to this 45% number in algebra, right? Like, it can't only be about our most advanced students and the experience they are not getting. That should be a part of the conversation. It needs to be about all of our students. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm gonna, I think we're clear. I'm just gonna stop there, sorry.
So I'll just sum it up. I mean, obviously we have, we'll have to actually vote on this at our next meeting. Between now and then, obviously there's still some community outreach, but once we actually decide and vote on the pathways, I think everything does shift a little bit and we start moving on to different things. So not that we wouldn't focus it, it's just that this has been sort of the topic du jour. So I'm gonna finish this item and we're gonna move on. So we are closing the item 7.2 and moving on. We postponed 8.1. We heard 9.1. We're going to 9.2. So LCAP.
Thank you, members of the board. This is a brief item. It's a format item. I wanted to create public awareness about the fact that the state of California is implementing a new reporting requirement relative to the LCAP that they're currently looking at as a 1-year requirement. It is possible that in the years down the line, they would turn this into a multiple year or perhaps a permanent process. As you know, the LCAP process is ongoing. The idea is to align your work and your resources around the district's greatest needs and to develop actions and strategies that fulfill needs. And as a board, you all receive annual presentations in April and May and in June, the first being the annual update, the second and third being the first review of the draft LCAP, and then in June, there's a typical LCAP adoption. Those documents are humongous, they're really lengthy, and they happen basically 10 months after you adopt your LCAP. So this is an interesting supplement to the LCAP annual update because it's going to happen in February. So I just didn't want to surprise the public or surprise you all and make you think this is like that we moved it up. This is actually a new requirement. Every school district in California is going to be required to have this supplement to the LCAP approved at their February meeting. And what's interesting about it is they really focused it. They focused it on these series of questions pertaining to funding that's sort of unique to the pandemic. So the ESSER 3 funds, the coordinated funds that came in that I think the idea is to have increased accountability, increased notification to families and to the community about how we're expending these funds and how we're utilizing these funds, to what purposes we've put these funds. So David and his team in Ed Services will spend the next 30 days putting together a really well thought out response to each one of these prompts. When that comes together, we'll bring it to the board in January for a first review and then an approval in February. But I just wanted to show the board this format and just open the conversation and give board members an opportunity to ask any questions now or to just say, we look forward to seeing what you put together in January. And with that, I'll turn it over to the board.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent Ochoa. Does anybody have any clarifying questions regarding this item? No, no. Seeing the shaking heads, no. Okay, let's move to public comment. We don't have anyone in the audience anymore. Diego P, would you mind opening up the public comment for those who are online, please?
Sure thing. If any member of the audience in the online Zoom would like to raise their hand for public comment on the agenda topic, please press the raise your hand functionality. President Shin, we have no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. I am closing public comment on this item. Does anybody, this item is only informational. There is no vote for this. Does anybody have any comments or direction for staff? No, 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 I don't believe so. So thank you for providing these for this to us. It's a good update and a good knowing that there's going to be a slight change here. So thank you for bringing it to us. We are moving on to item 10, board member statements and requests for future agenda items. Does anybody have any statements or requests for agenda items?
I had one, and actually it came up in the Ed Foundation meeting this week about when we will incorporate the 2020 census data in the trustee area maps. So if that's coming back, that would be great.
Any other comments, statements? No? Okay, I'll just make some statements here. I want to thank everybody for providing your comments tonight. I do want to say that that when it comes to math, and I've said this before, is that, you know, it comes up every few years. And so this is just our turn to deal with the curriculum. And so it's something that we're all here to do, and this is what our job is. And so I'm really thankful that it has come up tonight. I also do want to thank staff, and I didn't do this at the end, just thank staff for that presentation and for all of our teachers who have actually been working really hard on it, because I know that this is a big change and they've been working really hard to make everything work. And so I think the proof is in the data, and the data that we have seen at least. And so that's why I hope it comes out. So again, thank you guys for everything you guys have done. I know it's been difficult, but I truly believe we are going to succeed in this. I also want to, again, thank staff on the vaccine day. Again, I think the light is sort of at the end of the tunnel. We are definitely approaching it. And I want to thank everybody for all your hard work, for everything that you guys have done, even our meeting that's at 10:30 here at night. So it's not as late as normal, but again, thank you for everybody. And then lastly, I just want to wish everybody happy Thanksgiving. And I know that this is the first time our district is taking the full week off next week. And so I just hope that everyone can take some time to celebrate and spend time with your families, or just reset, because we all sort of need it. And then last plug, if you haven't gotten your vaccine or your children's vaccine, next week might be a good time to do it. So, but with that, I am done. So Superintendent Ochoa, next item, future agenda, future meeting dates.
We have two upcoming meetings. The first is a special school visitation meeting on December 7th, 2021, followed by the board's regular meeting on December 16th, 2021.
I think your mic is off the whole time. Sorry.
Well, that's not good. Can you hear me now?
No.
No. You don't have to say it.
Okay.
December 7th.
December 7th is a school site, is special site visit.
December 16th.
And December 16th is
Yeah.
our next regular meeting. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Versus a school visitation meeting.
Oh.
I'm just showing you I'm not on mute. My mic's not working.
No, it's a little
followed by
delayed
the
actually.
board's
I
regular
can hear you
meeting
now.
On December 16th,
There we go. I
2021,
just need to
we
speak
will
up.
be having our
No, it's delayed.
That's so odd.
That is very odd. Okay, anyways, I think that is a sign. So we have had technical difficulties tonight. I would just like to close this meeting. So I will need a motion for adjournment. Anyone would like
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Proctor for the motion, Trustee Corzo for the second. Roll
That's
call vote.
not good.
Trustee.
Can you hear me now? No.
Okay, that is really weird. We're gonna need to end this. Trustee Proctor.
Yes.
Trustee Warren. Trustee Corzo.
Yes.
And Trustee Watkins.
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. We are adjourning this meeting tonight at 10:39 p.m. So thank you all for attending.